Bring to order the February 26th meeting of the Tiverton Town Council. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Mello.
Councilor Perry,
Present.
Councilor Shabbat,
Present.
Councilor Ryan,
Present.
Councilor Hilton,
Present.
Councilor DiMederos,
Present.
Councilor Edwards,
Present.
Councilor LeBeau,
Here.
all present.
Approval of consent agenda. Approval of regular session minute meetings of February 12, 2018. Approval of executive session meeting minutes of February 12, 2018. Approval of special meeting minutes January 20th, 2018. Approval of special meeting minutes February 8th, 2018. Presence at the Personnel Board meeting, not all councilors in attendance. Approval of special meeting minutes February 13th, 2018. Councilor DiMederos abstains, absent. Approval of special meeting minutes February 17, 2018. Councilor Hilton and above, abstain, absent. Approval of special meeting minutes, open session February 20th, 2018. Councilor Edwards abstained, absent. Approval of special meeting minutes, executive session February 20th, 2018. Councilor Edwards abstains, absent. Receipt of minutes from the following boards and commissions: Charter Review Commission 3, Harbor and Coastal Water Management Commission, and the Cemetery Commission. Correspondence received and filed. Approval of tax assessor abatements. Treasurer Denise Charette, January expense and revenue reports. Monthly department head reports for January 2018. Would anybody like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Madam President,
Council Edwards?
item 1 as a whole.
Okay. Anyone else? Like to entertain a motion to accept 2, 3, 6 of the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Item 1, Council Edwards.
Madam Clerk, I just want to make a note. Didn't realize this until just now because I looked at these on the email version, but I only have A1A and A1E. So if it would be possible to just get paper printed copies, because I do keep those on file.
Did you get your executive session?
Yeah, I have the executive session one,
Okay.
but, yeah. And that was it, and so I'll make a motion to approve C1A in its entirety.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Open public forum. Do I have anything? No. Public hearing for zoning amendment, Article New, solar photovoltaic system development. Planning Board recommendations and draft amendment. Stu Hardy, Christopher Kearns, Office of Energy Resource amended recommendations. Email from residents in support of solar installations. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Stu Hardy, the chair of the Tiverton Planning Board, and my colleague is Christopher Kearns from the Rhode Island Office of Energy Resources, who has agreed to be with us here tonight as an expert resource person. I'd like to start out by just saying a word or two about how we got to where we are. It's been a long process. You probably remember that last January, Feral Bink Farms in South Tiverton made a petition to the town council for an ordinance to enable the development in Tiverton of a ground solar array photovoltaic energy system. And that was referred to the planning board, and we began our deliberations by putting together a committee made up of several members of the planning board and several private citizens, several of whom are here tonight, And they worked primarily taking a look at what other communities in Rhode Island and neighboring communities in Massachusetts had done by way of solar ordinance. And they came up with recommendations in late March or early April, which they sent back to the planning board. We then took those recommendations and we launched a series of about 6 or 7 sessions over the course of the rest of the year of 2017. And we had at least 2 public hearings. And we did gather a lot of information. We got information from the state. We got information from 3 industry representatives who came to most all of our meetings. We had a lot of input from the state fire, from the Tiverton Fire Marshal. We had Karen Benson, who represents, as an attorney for Farrell Bink Farms, as well as our 2 solicitors, who helped enormously. And so finally, we were able to put together something that we felt was really good, and we approved that on December 5, 2017, and then sent it to you. And once we had a hearing for a public hearing before Town Council, I got back to Christopher Kearns at the Rhode Island Office of Energy Resources and invited him to join us as a resource person. And I also sent him a copy of what the planning board had approved. And Chris came up with some additional edits, which he will be happy to address in a minute or 2. But before we get to that point, I'd just like to make 2 quick points about what we've done. First of all, we recognize that different sized solar array systems merit different review procedures. So it's not one size fits all. We have divided the universe of solar into small, which includes both roof-mounted, primarily for residential homes, and small ground solar arrays, medium-sized solar arrays, which would be in excess of 1,600 square feet. That's about the size of a typical, the footprint of a typical 3-bedroom residential home, suburban home. And then large, which would be larger than 40,000 square feet. And we've come up with different review procedures and different approval procedures for each one, so that the small systems, they can be basically built by right. They have to get a license from the state. They have to get a building permit, of course, like any other entity would get. And they have to have an agreement with National Grid to go forward. But basically, they can be built by right with no further bureaucracy and certainly no involvement by the planning board. The medium-sized systems, which are 1,600 square feet up to 40,000, 40,000 is close to an acre in size, that would go through an expedited review process at the planning board, which we call Article 20 Development Site Review. And so that will get an expedited review process. The big guys who are over 40,000, and they can go to any size, they can be 100 acres. They would go through the process set up in our subdivision regulations under Article 7, called major land development, because they really are a major land development. So that would be our typical 3-step process where we do the preliminary plan, the master plan, the preliminary plan, and the final plan review. So I think we got that right. And the final point I'd like to make is that I think we have forged a pretty good balance between being friendly to the solar industry and welcoming solar development in the town of Tiverton and protecting the town of Tiverton from something that might be unsightly, that might be a blight on our community. And we have regulations on setbacks, on lot coverage, on screening, on lighting, on signage, on surety to make sure that the system gets built the way it should get built and gets decommissioned and removed when it needs to be, when it's decommissioned, it's removed. So we have all of these provisions to protect the town of Tiverton. And I'd also like to say that this ordinance is squarely based on the comprehensive community plan. Our plan, as you all know, because you've been working with it lately, has a reference in element 10, the economic development element, that calls for the aggressive pursuit of environmentally sustainable energy production in the town of Tiverton. And that defines solar. And it also calls, as you know, the Comprehensive Community Plan also calls for protecting the visual character of Tiverton. And I think we've done that through the regulations that I just mentioned a minute ago. So having said that, I guess perhaps, Madam President, it would be useful now to have Chris Kearns go through, would that be appropriate at this point to go through the edits that his staff has made? And these edits, you had, they were distributed to you last week, and they're the ones that are in red. And it might look like an awful lot of red ink to you, but Chris and I both agree that there's nothing terribly major or significant here. Mostly what Chris has done is add clarity to what the planning board has already agreed to. And keep in mind, by the way, that the planning board has not approved this. We approved.
I was just gonna ask
the
that question.
We approved the clean one that you got back in December. So the planning board has not actually seen this. Speaking personally, I think that what Chris and his staff have done is entirely consistent with the thinking on the planning board. But keep in mind that the planning board is just advisory to the town council, so you make the ultimate decision, we don't. So what Chris has done basically is he's added some clarity, and also there have been some developments since the planning board approved our draft on December 5. There have been some regulatory developments at the state level that require some minor edits and modifications. So, Chris, would you like to walk us through? We did find two little typos, which Chris will point your attention to. But
1 second, Chris. Councilor Hilton?
I'd actually like to ask this solicitor something before you start on this. And before I ask this question, you know, I've been waiting for this ordinance for a long time, and I know a lot of people are, and I'm not trying to make life difficult, but I have some real concerns here, because if I understand this correctly, there's a version here that the planning board held a public hearing on and approved, that the board approved. Then there's an amended version that's being submitted by you, Stu, and Mr. Kearns.
no, by Mr. Kearns.
Okay, by Mr. Kearns as an individual.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
So it's not the version that was advertised, nor is it the version that the letters, for example, of support we have in our packet are. So, and I'll be honest, I got some phone calls from folks who liked the planning board's version and are very concerned that some of the changes in here are not what they thought they were supporting. So I would like to ask the solicitor what the process is here, given that we have a version that the planning board approved and sent to us that was advertised, and then we have another version that's being submitted by Mr. Kearns as an individual. What is the correct way to go about this?
The ordinance that is the subject of the hearing tonight is the original ordinance. My understanding is that this amended ordinance, which is being suggested by the state official, has some edits and corrections and things of that nature. Your hearing tonight should proceed on the original ordinance. The question then becomes whether or not these amendments are that different that it should be referred back to the planning board for a subsequent hearing. But I think you need to proceed today on the original ordinance. Let Mr. Kearns explain exactly what he's trying to do here with these amendments.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, council members. Just for clarity, Stuart reached out to the Office of Energy Resources after this ordinance was passed by the planning board and wanted to get OER's comments about the various sections for clarity, anything to potentially give our perspective on. So that's where the Office of Energy Resources is providing our comments tonight. In terms of clarity, I'll just go through them and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. As it relates to the second paragraph, there was a statewide building electric solar permit application passed by the General Assembly in June of last year. That went into effect on January 1st of 2018. It's a one statewide building electric permit that all municipal building officials are required to use for any solar applications that come before the town. So we just clarified that just to be consistent with state law. As it relates to the definition sessions, all we simply did was just clarify the type of projects that you'll see in terms of some will be roof-mounted, some will be ground-mounted, but depending on the financial arrangement with the state laws, you could build a project at one location, say a church is the recipient. That church doesn't necessarily have to be in Tiverton, it could be at another location. So the language within, and again, for clarity, under Section A, I mistakenly inverted ground-mounted within that sentence. That shouldn't have been there. But for Sections B, C, and D, this is simply just saying, okay, here's the type of solar projects that you guys are going to potentially see within those square footage limitations. We're just clarifying the types of solar projects that you may see before as a town. And again, it's going to vary whether it's a residential roof-mounted project. Say this local school wants to do a solar project, they may do a virtual net metered project at the local level, or you have some projects where you have a farm, they're looking for an additional revenue source, so they'll install the system and sell the power back to the utility and would receive a revenue stream. So our amendments just were to clarify the type of solar projects that you would see. It doesn't change anything in terms of the scale of the projects within that, up to 40,000 or up to 1,600 square foot portions. On page 2, you guys, there was a proposal to require a minimum 3-acre parcel size. We're always mindful that every location is unique and that ultimately every property owner that has a National Grid bill pays into these programs annually. So our concern was potentially preemptively blocking a property owner with, say, 2.5 acres that couldn't potentially propose a solar project. So that's why we were recommending, ultimately, these projects have to be reviewed and approved by the planning board of the town council. Why arbitrarily block out certain property owners?
Madam President, just a quick comment, and I want to thank you for crossing off that minimum parcel size of no less than 3 acres, but I think you went in a different direction than why I would say we should cross it off. So specifically, the footnote is the double asterisk there, and that's applied to R30 and R40 zones, where you can really have a 3-acre lot in an R30 or an R40 zone. I don't think that's applicable. So I thought that's the direction you were going with crossing that out of there, because those double asterisks only apply to 2 super small zones. Am I right in the way it was written?
Yes, and actually, the 3-acre minimum was my idea. The two zones are, as John correctly pointed out, are R30 and R40. R30 is North Tiverton, north of Judson Street. It's that mill village that is intensely developed. It's really an extension of Fall River, but it does have, it has 2 or 3 places where you could do, I'm thinking of the Michael lot, which is about a 20-acre lot on Mill Street. I'm thinking of, there's one other, and I can't quite remember who it is. I think it may be the Simpson family who owns it off Evans Avenue. But the reason why I suggested to the planning board that we put a 3-acre minimum is that I was concerned that it might be too too visual, too intrusive to the neighborhood, too disruptive to the neighborhood. But I don't feel that strongly about it one way or the other. You can, Chris pointed out to me that we would be denying some people the access to a state program, I believe you told me, Chris, if we restricted it to 3 acres. I don't feel that strongly about it. The R40 is basically Greater Stone Bridge, and again, that's pretty heavily developed. You do have some large lots. You have the Hicks Farm, which is like 80, 85 acres. You have the Robert Shaw Farm off Highland Avenue. So we don't want to make those areas ineligible, because the alternative might be a housing development. And solar panels don't have kids in the public school system, but housing developments have kids in the public school system. So, but we put the 3 acre in just to protect the 3 acre restriction, that you'd have to have at least 3 acres. I don't feel that strongly about it one way or the other. It's really up to you to decide. But keep in mind that we're only talking about a tiny portion of town. Maybe 1/4 of the town of Tiverton is in the R30 and R40. I have the map here if you want to check it out. The planning board did approve the 3 acre minimum, so we'll let you think about that while Chris goes on.
Yep. On page 4, we just clarified the majority of residential installations that you're going to see are solar panels. We've awarded probably over 3,000 plus homeowners across the state their solar panels. Solar shingles are a very niche type market. There's only a handful of those type of installations. So we just wanted to clarify photovoltaic roof shinglings or solar panel type installations. Section D, we struck, there was a letter that went out by the State Building Code Commission Office. Any ordinance that has building code has to be consistent with the state building code. The current building code is the 2012 building code. They're going to update it over the next 12 plus months to reference solar. This type of provision is inconsistent with the state building code. On page 5, in terms of the surety, Stuart gave me an overview of this. What we did was we proposed language that we see in the town of Richmond, who has several solar projects. Every site is unique and different. A closed landfill is going to require a decommissioning plan that's going to be different from a commercial zoned area or a residential zoned area. A one-size-fits-all, we've noticed, generally doesn't work well because you're making a predetermined decision. This language allows that when the applicant submits their total application to the town for consideration, that they put forward a decommissioning plan with the associated costs, and ultimately that is run by the local tax assessor for review. Any requirements to modify it then are recommended by the tax assessor. But a one-size-fits-all is generally not the approach that we see with towns. And then finally, I believe, utility notification. Ultimately, that is something that's regulated through the Public Utility Commission and the Division of Public Utilities and Carriers. Sign off on all interconnection matters is dealt purely by National Grid, not generally through a planning board to verify how the system's going to be interconnected. All the applications that are submitted to the town will have to have that information in terms of how they're going to be interconnected to National Grid system within the local area. But that's regulated by our state energy regulatory offices.
Madam President, one question there. Is it worthwhile to specifically name National Grid? Because I remember a time when it was Narragansett Electric.
Yeah, you could reference National Grid. It's your only utility within the town, so there'd be nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, my only concern is that, like, let's say tomorrow National Grid gets sold.
Yep.
Because they have aging infrastructure, et cetera, and it, is no longer National Grid. Now it's, ABC Electric Company.
Yep.
We're gonna have to go back in and redo this ordinance.
And I believe we actually reference National Grid.
Yeah, no, you.
Stated.
I'm saying is should we reference specifically National Grid?
What you could do is you could just say the electric distribution company.
Okay.
That's a definition used by our Public Utility Commission in terms of utilities.
Trying to make this thing future-proof.
Yep.
Good luck.
And then finally, on page 5, under section J, again, we just referenced the statewide building electric permit law that went into effect in terms of that application. And then the last provision, again, it says a small solar system that is no longer operational must be removed prior to the sale of the property. We've never seen that type of language before. Ultimately, if somebody's going to purchase the home, it's the responsibility of that homeowner and that acquiring the property to know everything about the property before they execute a mortgage or anything on the property. So we've never seen that type of language, so that was why we had recommended that be struck. And I think that's
Chris, there was just another little typo, and it's on using the original version that was approved by the planning board. It's on page 3, under subsection H and I, we refer to the material safety data sheets. That's a requirement of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, the federal agency, that anybody who manufactures, stores, or handles hazardous chemical materials has to have a hazard communication plan that includes MSDS as well. MSDSs have now been renamed. They're now called SDSs, safety data sheets. So we have to get rid of the MSDS and go to SDS. That's something that the government did about a year ago, and we have just caught up with it. So I don't think any of the changes that Chris has recommended are really significant. You might want to think about the 3-acre minimum. Should we insist that people who own property in the R30 and R40 districts have at least 3 acres before they can do medium or large solar ground arrays? I don't feel strongly about it one way or the other, but I remind you that the planning board did approve the 3-acre minimum. That's probably the only substantive issue, Chris, don't you think?
Yeah, a lot of it is just to reflect certain programs or policies.
Tony, what do you think? Do you think that these are drastic changes? Or?
The 3 acres needs to be addressed, because that goes to the issue of notice. The second issue is the last one on page 5, about the decommissioning of a system that's no longer operational. I understand, because I have familiarity with these ordinances, that's a new one, but I don't think that's a bad one, and I think it's worthy of discussion, because basically what happens if you have a non-functioning system, the time to get it done is make it a condition of the sale, as opposed to leaving the burden on the new owner coming in that might not have the resources to do something like that, and you have a system out there that's non-operational. It's not fatal to the ordinance, but I do think it's something that goes to notice that you ought to discuss. The rest of them seem to me to be either explanatory or referencing to state law changes.
At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. Anyone from the audience like to come up and speak regarding this subject? It's all right, Chris, you can sit where you are.
Yeah, no, he's just saying that there's a mic, that's
They're gonna
stand
use
mic.
that mic.
Hi,
We need you as the expert.
Introduce yourself and your address.
my name is Barbara Martin, 313 Neck Road. I was on the original ad hoc committee. I think this is a very, well, I certainly approve of the planning board's ordinance. I do have a couple of questions. On the 3-acre requirement, if it, I'm just asking, if it were less than that, would you be able to meet the setbacks from the property line, and then also the buffering with, I don't know whether you would be able to do that if you didn't have a 3-acre minimum.
You could probably do it with 2 acres, because the setbacks are only 60 feet. And within that 60 feet, 30 has to be buffered.
Okay. Well, I approve of the 3 acres. anyway, that's just my thought. Okay, on the surety, there was something that was removed from the planning board's surety, was that the surety shall be held by the planning board until such time as the planning board votes to release the funds. And the surety will not be required for municipal or state-owned facility. That seems to be missing, any kind of a reference seems to be missing from the new recommendations. I think that the planning board's surety holds the property owner or the operator to more accountability. And I would like to see that added or kept in the final wording. And I also agree to the, let me see, on the last page, that a small system that is no longer operational should be removed. There's nothing like the carrot of a sale to get things done. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Barbara. Would anyone else like to come and speak on this subject?
Good evening, members of the council. My name's Karen Benson. I represent the Peckham family and Farrell Bink Farms. And we have had a chance to review what Mr. Cairns proposes. We don't have any objections. We do have a few comments. Because we have some sort of practical life experience, as you know, and how would this apply to an actual solar installation. I believe the language that is proposed by Mr. Cairns and the state agency is more flexible as far as surety goes, but leaves the authority in the hands of the town to provide whatever guarantee is deemed appropriate for the specific installation. So although it is different from what was proposed by the planning board, I think this is preferable. And specifically, I'd note that the original language was mandatory. It was shall. And it could have prevented beneficial development if the landowners, for example, and not a developer was going to come in and try and do the installation. So take the Peckham plan. It's only partially funded, perhaps $30,000 of a mid-six-figure development. There is no bank, okay? The family, the property owners are doing it. And so an onerous surety requirement could prevent a beneficial agricultural development when they're only getting grant money and they're being self-funded. So we're in favor of that amendment and think it gives the town protection, and yet it gives the proposed developer plenty of flexibility. I know Stuart, Chairman, spoke to this, but I believe that our state statute requires that we have to be sure that any ordinance modification comports with our comprehensive plan. So I've submitted a letter to Ms. Mello and to Mr. DeSisto where I try to pull out not only from economic point of views and aesthetic point of views, but other elements of our comprehensive plan that we believe this ordinance satisfies. And I try to cite to the plan as well as the Rhode Island general laws. And I won't belabor it so that other people can get up and speak, but I would suggest to you that multiple parts of our comprehensive plan, and I know that is being amended, are supported and enhanced, and our goals would be achieved by enacting this ordinance. We'd actually become sort of up to speed with many of the other municipalities in the state of Rhode Island. What Stuart said, the story is, I'm embarrassed now, but it's humorous now, but I was embarrassed at the time. When we came to the town to try to install the proposed agricultural plan, a ground-mounted medium solar, there was no way to apply. There was no way to have the ordinance work for the application. And so that was the catalyst for what the planning board ultimately developed. And we feel now, after having reviewed the amendments proposed by Mr. Kearns, that it would be an appropriate ordinance for all levels of solar development, whether they be ground-mounted, roof-mounted, small or major developments. And we encourage you to vote in favor of it.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience would like to speak? Anyone else from the audience? I'd like to close the public hearing. Sorry, Rosemary.
That's okay. Rosemary Eve, a member of the Tiverton Planning Board. I also would agree with the comments that are made by Mr. DeSisto on several topics that he brought up. It needs discussion. We, the Planning Board, being a member, we spent a lot of time on this ordinance, and thank Ms. Benson for her help as well. And I think that to see this, and I think the Planning Board should be advised of the new, amendments. I don't mean to belabor the decision, but I think it's important to the town. I didn't find out about this until last Friday and didn't get a copy of it until today. No, I don't believe other members of the board had it either. Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience? One more time. Anyone else from the audience? I'd like to close the public hearing. Any comments from the council?
Madam President,
John?
I think by and large, I like every single one of the changes that you've put forward here, Chris. I appreciate that. I think personally we ought to take it for what it is with 2 minor edits, delete the ground mounted underneath the accessory roof mounted section, as Chris pointed out. And then also change National Grid to electric distribution company, and I think we should vote this thing forward.
I second.
Discussion?
Madam President, I also was sent some emails and also had people talk to me, and I think the process, I also would like this to move forward, but I also think the process was a bit kind of strange. And I'm just wondering if it's so easy, if you could just get it back to the planning board, let them talk about it. It doesn't seem like a lot, but they should be able to do it. You're saying no?
I think Chris is happy to waive the issues that are causing problems, the substantive issues. I'm not going to put this on the agenda of the planning board if it's simply typos, updates.
That doesn't sound it. It sounds like there's,
That's not what this is.
that's not what the solicitor is saying either. It sounds like there are 2 substantive issues.
There are only 3 substantive issues. The 3-acre limit
Yeah.
for the R30 and R40. Chris is willing to concede that. He doesn't think it's a big deal. So we can leave that in, if that would make it possible to move forward tonight and not to move it back to the planning board. The second issue is surety. If you all feel that we had the surety correct at the planning board level, I don't think Chris is going to commit suicide if we bypass his recommendations and his staff's recommendations on that. Actually, we had this long discussion with the 3 industry representatives, and they made the same point that Chris has made, but they conceded to us that it wasn't a deal breaker and that they could live with what we had done on surety. And then the third issue, Mr. Solicitor, is the removal of small systems. Again, I think Chris feels that it's kind of gratuitous, correct, to insist that the seller remove the system before it transfers to a new owner. But as a practical matter, I don't see an issue here because frankly, a new owner, when somebody makes a purchase and sale agreement on a piece of property, they're going to say it's conditional upon removal of that old derelict system, right, Chris? So if Chris is willing to waive these 3 issues, then we're basically going back to what the planning board has given you, and with the corrections of MSDS to SDS. And some of the other edits that Chris has suggested that simply clarify the language. And then we can perhaps move on, because I think people want, we spent a whole year on this. And maybe it is my fault that I didn't call Chris in before we actually voted. I actually thought it might make sense to give Chris a clean, sophisticated product for him to react to rather than a number of the drafts that we were dealing with at the planning board level. But in any case, I'd certainly urge you to, let's move ahead tonight on this and not send it back to the planning board.
Madam President.
Councilor Hilton had asked before.
Okay, that's all right.
But I will get back to you.
I'm here till at least 11.
Me too. Okay, go ahead.
I have a question about the original language, actually. On a medium and large system, in the definitions, where it says a solar energy system that is, this is the quote, primary use of the lot or lots. Does that mean that in order to have a medium or a large system, particularly if you're on an agricultural property or something like that, you're going to have to subdivide this out so that that is the primary use?
No, that would
Well,
not.
then explain that, because it says this is the primary use of the lots.
On that particular lot, that system could support the farm and produce electricity.
No, that's not my question. But the way that this is written, it refers to this as the primary use of the lot. You can't have two primary uses on the lot. So if somebody's got a house on that lot, right, and then they want to put this solar array on this same lot, what does this mean? Because you're saying that the way that this is written, it sounds like that the solar use has to be the primary use. And a house isn't an accessory structure to a solar array or a barn or any other structure. Are you following what I'm saying here? I'm a little concerned here that and I see that Karen is shaking her head. I'm a little concerned here that the language is going to cause people, if they want to do this, for example, on a farm, to actually do an administrative subdivision to subdivide out that farm property in order to put a medium or a large system on it.
That's certainly not our intention.
It might not be, but I think it's what the language says. I mean, I think if you passed it this way, and for example, somebody, somebody complained and came in and said, well, it's got to be the primary use on the lot. So
Yeah, actually, if I may, the residential part, I don't view as the main issue. If it's an agricultural use or even an industrial use, I'm not so sure you want to put that down as the primary. And I'm not even so sure it's necessary when you think about it. Because if you have this size of it, it doesn't matter if it's the primary use or not. But if it is the primary use, then the question becomes, how do you fit that in if you have a farm, for instance, like Farrellbink Farms, which is really the primary use of the property? I'm not so sure you need to have that language in there. It's necessary for accessory roof mounted and small, because that has to be an accessory use. But for medium and large, I actually think that might be a little bit problematic. That's the first thing. By the way, Stu, could you just explain to the town council why there is a distinction between medium and large systems? I know there's a definition as to the size of the arrays, but since they're both permitted uses, but they have the same requirements, they go to the planning board for a development plan review.
No, the large ones actually go to the planning board under major land development.
Oh, I beg your pardon, I'm sorry.
So are you suggesting that if we simply take out the language that Councilor Hilton raised a question about, that would solve the issue?
Yes, I'm concerned about it, actually, particularly the,
Yeah, but I'm looking for a solution.
yes, and that's what I'm
Okay.
trying to say.
So
I
your
don't-
solution is to simply take out the language?
Yes, because I don't think the language is necessary, and you want to encourage multiple uses on these larger parcels.
I don't, the planning board did not mean to create a problem there, and I think that your recommendation is entirely consistent with the thinking of the planning board.
That's why we have public hearings.
That's why we have public hearings.
Now, I do have a second question about this, and Stu, you might not be able to answer this. But on the agricultural properties, most of which are in the farm, forest, and open space program. Has anybody talked with the tax assessor about what the tax implications, like how the land with the solar array is taxed? Chris says he can answer that, particularly vis-a-vis, so if you're in farm, forest, and open space and you set aside 10 acres for solar, that comes out of the farm, forest, and open space program, and how is that taxed?
Right. That's really not pertinent to this hearing tonight.
Well, actually, I can answer it.
I'm running the hearing here, Stu, and I think it is pertinent.
But Chris did send me some information for our tax assessor, which I did pass on to Dave Robert, and Tony, did you?
Well,
Go ahead.
this is equipment, so it's taxed as tangible.
Right.
It doesn't go to the real estate. So even though you have farm, forest, and open space, these types of power generating systems are allowed in farm, forest, and open space without impairing the taxability of the underlying land. However, the tax assessor will tax the arrays, and there is a state formula on how you tax arrays.
Is it okay to speak?
Yes.
Could be, yes.
Go ahead, Chris.
So there's actually two state laws. 2016, the state adopted a statewide tangible tax value formula. It's $5 times the nameplate capacity of the system. The objective is for those projects that are selling power back to the grid and we're creating a revenue stream, that the town has the ability to collect taxes on that. This past session, to your question, under the DEM Farm Forest Open Space Program, we were encountering issues where a farm that was in the FFOS program, say they had a 100-acre lot and they were paying a lower land value taxation on that property. Say they wanted to do a solar system that required 5 acres. The concern was the developer, the farmer, would do all the work and then potentially have that entire 10 acres or 100 acres reassessed at a commercial land value instead of a farm land value. So there was a state law passed last session that clarified that a farm within the FFOS program could utilize up to 20% of their total acreage. And that 20%, that solar system, the tax assessor would have the ability to reassess that distinct piece of property as commercial property tax instead of farmland because it's creating a revenue stream. However, they couldn't change the other 80% of the total acreage out of the farmland value. So that was a law passed last legislative session that went into effect in late June.
He's explaining it better than I am.
That was exactly the question I was asking. And I know that Stu has offered up the 3 acres. I think that I would like to see the 3 acre minimum stay in the R30 and R40 because I took the GIS map and went through R30 and R40. And there are some really big parcels there which are well beyond 3 acres and they could do this. But there are a whole bunch, a fair number of 1.5, 2.5 acre parcels that are all scattered through R30 and R40 that are plunk in the middle of neighborhoods. Like, it's the one lot that nobody developed. And I have to say, I'm not sure, I'm all for this, but I don't know how folks would feel if they had a nice, quiet neighborhood and found out that they were getting a medium-sized solar array in the middle. And so I think when you actually look at the conditions on the ground, that 3 acres should be the minimum. If you want to put in a special permit for people to have a way to get around that, I'd be okay with it. But I'm just afraid we'll end up with, all of a sudden, we'll have neighborhoods turning up going, wait a second, there is this one lot in my neighborhood that wasn't developed and the kids played there and now it's a solar array. So I'd really like to see the 3 acre minimum stay everywhere with a special use permit if you want to way around it.
Okay to speak?
Yes, go ahead, Chris.
I agree with it in terms of, I'm always getting educated at the local level in terms of how each town works. My understanding, if there was a unique situation that popped up that met the characteristics and wasn't going to be a issue, they could theoretically just come before the town, ask for a variance or a special use. So that's understandable. My only comment, not related to that, is regarding the surety is, again, we look at projects across the state. Some projects are going to be financed by third-party finance entities out of Boston or California that can afford that 110% surety. Some of them are going to be financed through state and federal grants for farms that are going to be owned by the property owner that don't have the financial resources. So that's why we were proposing the language regarding the decommissioning plan, because it gives flexibility to each respective property owner, because not every project is universal in nature in terms of how they're financed or built.
Okay. Councilor LeBeau?
The only comment I had was on the 3 acres, and I didn't want to handcuff people with 3 acres or under to say, well, now we're cutting off some other people, but with everything that was just said, have an opportunity for them to come in and get it, I'm okay with it. I just didn't want to handcuff people who might want to have something on their property. If all the neighbors are okay with it, go for it. So with everything that's been said, I don't need the mic anymore. Thank you.
I need a clarification.
Go ahead, Joe.
These pages that were handed us, you're telling me everything in red ink was not approved or brought to the planning board before?
No, and that's really my fault, because I didn't share what the planning board had approved with Chris and with the Office of Energy Resources until after the planning board had approved it.
Okay, and the open hearing that you had, these items in red were not brought up at that open hearing also, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
But, yes. Anyone else?
Just, I want the clarification too. So, Trish, what you're saying for that large system and the medium system, is it just cross off that first,
Yeah, the primary use.
just cross off primary use? You just cross off the whole thing, right? A solar energy system, that is the primary use?
That was my question. I have to say, I am a little concerned about simply saying the solution is just to cross it off, because, this is the sort of decision that you make on the fly, right? And then you didn't think it all the way through. My issue is that you can't call it a primary use, because you're going to restrict properties that have an existing primary use from being able to do this. But I'm not also sure that we have not completely thought this all the way through to the end, and whether or not, is that the whole solution, Tony? Or I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not opening Pandora's box here with something I didn't think of when we said we do
I
that.
can tell you that, in my experience in dealing with these ordinances in other communities, that language for a large generating facility is not present, because a good portion of those facilities are existing on, they could be on the top of a mill building or a
Right.
factory buildings. There's other uses
There's
going
a-
on there.
There's another
then
existing
the
primary
question-
use already there.
Yeah, the question becomes, how do you determine which one is the primary use? The other thing is also, because it's such a large facility and it's going through the approval process, those issues can be fleshed out. The question isn't whether or not it's the primary or the accessory use. The question is whether or not it should go in. For the smaller ones, the residential facilities, it has to be an accessory use.
Right.
What you don't want is to open up into your residential areas any type of facility that is other than generating for the residential homeowner.
Well, I mean, this ordinance sort of does that now, right? Though, I mean, if you say that 3 acres is the minimum, I mean, you've got a lot of residential properties that are 3 acres or slightly above, in which case, they can put in a medium system or a large system, the way this ordinance is written. If we take, this is what I
Yes.
mean about Pandora's box.
Yes.
If you take the word primary out, and you've got a 4-acre home site, then you could put in a medium or large system. And I'm not sure whether or not that was the planning board's intention when they did this, or was the intention for that to be on, I don't know. I'm
Technically, in the if you keep the 3 acre minimum in, technically in the R30 or the R40 zone, if you have a lot in excess of 3 acres,
you'll be able to do it.
then you'd be
By
able
right.
to do it. But you know what? It's not going to matter whether or not you have on primary or accessory, because it's going to be the primary use. So if you keep the language that it is now, then it's going to be the primary use.
Right.
And if you say it's accessory, that means something else can go in there.
Right,
So, that's the trade-off.
yeah. Oh, did the planning board, I mean, did you guys discuss for residential uses who wanted to do this? Like, was there I mean, was there a discussion about, other than accessory roof-mounted systems, you know, these medium or large systems going on residential property, other than, you know, like agricultural property? I mean, did that come up as part of the discussion?
Yes, and I, and it was the view of the majority of the members of the planning board that residential areas should be open to medium and large systems, including the R30 and R40, which do have a few large plots of land there. And we felt that way because we felt that would give the property owner an alternative than to sell it to a developer and put in a subdivision. So, yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Madam President?
Yes.
I'd like to amend my motion to strike the words, "That is the primary use of a lot or lots," from the medium system and the large system. And if the council pleases, I'll add back in the 3-acre minimum, and also Stu's comment about deleting the words "material" from subsection H and I and changing MSDS to SDS. And then we can move this thing forward.
I second my motion to you to get this done.
You second the amendment. You know, I am concerned, and it might be just my concern, but that you change this. I know you don't feel it's a significant change, but it's confusing because of the red line. And that the planning board really, this is not a clean copy, and I think that's the best way for me to say it. This is not a clean copy to me. There is suggestions that the planning board did not review and did not discuss in a public hearing. I'm a little uncomfortable with this procedure, and I don't know what to say. This is not what the planning board wanted to submit to us, and this is not what was at the public hearing. So the process is a little flawed, and I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with this. Tony. And I don't know if the rest of you feel this way, but it's a very confusing document to me because this is not what the planning board is submitting, and it's not what the public hearing, this is not what they had at the public hearing. And I don't know if I like this process right now.
Well, you know, except for those issues that I brought up, the rest of them, they're really either explanatory or they're just language changes. But I understand there's a lot of red lines.
There's a lot of red lines. It's not clean to me. It's confusing to me.
Madam President.
And then there's been a couple of, like, I have a lot of crossing out that just happened. Taking out primary use, or maybe not taking out primary use. I don't know.
You want me to revisit my motion?
I would just like this to be cleaner to me, and I don't know if that's the way, well, I have a motion on the floor right now.
And move it.
So, but that's just my opinion, and I just wanted to say, because I've never quite seen this before, where a planning board goes for public hearing, and then it comes back to us all redlined. I've really never seen this process like this. But I'll move the motion. So I have John's motion on the floor, which Nancy,
Do you want me to restate it, what my motion was?
please.
Can I just have?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And Counselor Shabbat should also get
Madam
to
President?
Joan, I didn't know that you wanted to.
I'm just, on the surety side, I'm just a little concerned. If you read the new language, it basically says the tax assessor shall review the estimated decommissioning cost, either confirm or recommend to the planning board an alternative amount of the financial guarantee the applicant must provide to ensure facility removal and site restoration. So
Yeah.
it does remove the piece about it being the financial guarantee being, is the financial guarantee a surety? And is that held by the planning board to decide whether it's released or not? Or does that mean that it goes to the town council for release, or to continue to hold it? It's not clear in that section how that financial guarantee proceeds. So-
Correct.
So it kind of leaves it open-ended as to how to get that surety removed.
It does.
And that's acceptable?
Well, I'm not saying it's acceptable or not, but the case was made that you want to do that because some of these projects are going to be self-financed, and there could be some funding coming in from grants and things of that nature. I'm not saying that's the way to go, but that was the explanation for that.
It still has the word "must" in there, so it must provide. So it's still saying it's required, I would say.
It talks about the bond going in but not going out. I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm not,
It's like I said, it's,
it leaves it up in the air.
Where is it?
Under page 5, surety.
Page 5, next to the last line.
Oh, I
Up
see
in
it.
here,
I see it.
up in here, it gives it an out.
Yep.
It says
well,
what
that's what I'm
happens.
saying. What the planning board suggests was completely crossed out, and now we have this new language.
Now, I don't have a problem with the tax assessor reviewing and all that stuff, but shouldn't we have something to say how it gets released? Is that normal in other ordinances that require a surety, or is this part of the development plan?
Let's just say it's a good idea,
What Joan is
how a
questioning.
bond gets released.
Tricia's up next.
Yeah.
So I have another question for Stu on the original. In the use table, general commercial has got an asterisk next to it, but I can't, a single asterisk. Is that just missing an asterisk that at the bottom that clarifies that general commercial is general commercial, TMS, NB, and PFD?
Yes, that's correct. We wanted to remind everybody that the general commercial does now include, in certain places, the general commercial does include the form-based code, the 3 form-based code
Okay.
sub-districts.
And my next question is, I know that medium and large systems are going to go through development plan review.
Uh-huh.
So the only established setbacks for this exist for the R30 and R40 zones.
Correct. No, the setbacks are for all of the zones.
Well, the
the
double
asterisk-
asterisks only go with mediums, solar and large solar in R30 and R40.
On page 2, yeah, you look.
Okay, so restate your question. I didn't quite follow it.
Okay. The setback requirements, the additional setback requirements, which are next to the double asterisks?
Yes.
Those double asterisks only go with medium and large solar in R30 and R40.
That's
not
correct,
the others.
and they're a little larger than the setbacks for for other zones. That is correct.
Where are the setbacks for the other zones?
The setbacks for the other zones are in the dimensional requirements where it talks about a medium and large installation shall maintain a 50-foot setback or 60-foot setback as required in Section 3. So for everybody else, it's 50 feet, but for R30 and R40, it's 60 feet. So
Okay.
we added 10 feet to the setback just to protect the neighbors in those very dense neighborhoods. May I make a suggestion, Madam Chairman?
Go ahead.
There seems to be concern about what the state has proposed with respect to the red lines. If we were to simply dismiss all of that, even the language that clarifies, and even the language that maybe updates and modernizes a little bit, would that make people feel a little more comfortable about approving this ordinance?
Madam President.
No, because if the state is suggesting thing, I think we should look at it. We shouldn't just, that's my opinion. We should just.
Madam President?
Yes.
I've been sitting over here waiting, and you ignored me again.
Oh, I didn't.
You let everybody go.
Honestly.
All I want to know is if what this ordinance is going to hold up a development of, have people been waiting for this ordinance for a year for this thing to come through? And if that's the case, then we need to fix these little errors and push it through so these people can get their businesses going and their farms going and this ordinance put to bed. We can't keep pushing stuff back. We can fix it right now. Let's fix it and vote on it if people are waiting. If they're not waiting, if they can wait another year because Tiverton kicks the can, then we don't have to vote on it. But if these people are waiting for an ordinance, then we need to pass this ordinance. Fix it right now and pass it.
The thing that upsets me is that the planning board in the open hearing didn't review these things in red ink, and that bothers me.
We didn't have them
That
then.
bothers me, that we're going to approve something that wasn't
Well,
looked
right,
at the
Stu.
open hearing.
You just said the key thing, though. You didn't have it during your open hearing. You should have, though, if you were going to have an open hearing. And then you add this after your open hearing.
Madam President?
Yes.
Yeah, if I could just make a comment. In my opinion, this is public commentary, right? These are the public, like, when we've been dealing with the comprehensive plan, people come in, they offer public commentary. I'm simply saying that the ordinance that was put forward here, that was given to us by the planning board, I want to take the public commentary that was suggested by the state and include that with some revisions, and I have one more amendment to make, and then I think we need to move this thing forward because it's been taking far too long, and we have a million other things we have to get to tonight.
And it's going to work in the manner that it's here, we can make it work. If these folks can wait, but they've been waiting long enough, like everything else. If we can fix it tonight, let's fix it and pass it and move on.
Okay.
That's just my opinion, but I've been on their seat, and now I'm on this seat, so I know how it goes.
All right. I have a motion on the floor, and I have a request to move it forward. We can vote on the motion on the floor. Go ahead.
I'd just like to ask Stu one question. Would not be possible, you have a meeting next week?
Yes, we do. We have a meeting on the
You
6th.
have a meeting on the 6th. Would it be possible for this to go on your agenda for the 6th, have the planning board look at these red lines, make sure they're good with it, and then we could vote on this at our next meeting? I mean, I think the planning board is going to be okay with all this. The surety language,
still
I
a
think,
surety issue.
the
That's
surety
gonna be my
language
final
needs some work. There's not, the surety language doesn't, I get that it needs to be more flexible, but this is too loose. Would that be possible?
Would they have to have another public hearing, though?
No.
No.
So if they didn't have another public hearing, could this come back to us without being re-advertised, and we could vote on it at the next meeting, have them have the chance to opine on this?
Because this is a zoning ordinance amendment, under the State Enabling Act, the planning board doesn't have to have a public hearing. You do.
Yeah.
That's a public hearing tonight. So, do they need another public hearing? No.
Could we continue our public hearing then till the
Yes.
to our next meeting and vote on it then with the planning board's blessing? I mean, I feel bad about pushing this back. I know people are waiting, but I also want it to be fully thought through and not make a decision in a hurry that we're going to regret later on.
The public hearing can be continued.
Well, right now I have a motion on the floor. So, fairness to John and Randy, we need to vote on that motion. Now, John, you said you wanted to amend that motion?
Yeah, one more amendment based on the comments by Councilor Shabbat. In the state public commentary, we just want to put the language, surety shall be held by the planning board until such time as the planning board votes to release the funds. That will happen before the final line in the red line, which I think addresses all of the concerns. And if it would be helpful for everybody, I can go line by line with what my motion would do, because I've been making notes.
Joan?
I think you maybe want to include the sentence in front of that, surety, because it identifies a
include that
small
too, then.
ground array shall be exempt from posting a surety.
Yes.
And I think
Beautiful.
that's important to have in there. But shall record an agreement that they'll be responsible for it to be removed. So that is also something that needs to be in there to exclude, because I think that's very important.
Perfect. Included in my amendment as well. Councilor
have-
Shavitz.
Including in my second.
Okay, wait a minute.
No, but it's on tape. I mean, I
John, you
have
need
the
to,
basic.
you
All
need
right.
to clarify your motion.
So here's my motion.
We lost on
We're-
where you are.
We're gonna take the state proposed language.
Before you do that, can I have one more question?
Go ahead, Joan.
On page 5, where it says screening, on E1, it says, "Small systems shall require fence, screening, or vegetation surrounding the perimeter of the installation." If the small system is on the roof, how can you have screening around the perimeter of the installation? So
This is not meant to apply to a roof system. There is a separate section for roof-mounted systems that,
Page 1.
on page 1,
Small system includes the array on the ground. If the array's on the ground, that's when that kicks in.
okay. So is that clear?
Yes.
All right, John.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it would be the red line version. Under accessory roof-mounted system, we delete the words "or ground-mounted" because that doesn't apply to a roof-mounted system. Put back in minimum parcel size of no less than 3 acres on page 2.
John, before you go any further, with the option for people to be able to come back.
That's understood, yeah.
Okay, so long as that's understood, because I don't
John,
want
you-
to shut people down.
You forgot the primary use.
That's primary use.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have that in there too, so I have it crossed out. In deleting on the first page that, the words, "that is the primary use of a lot or lots" from section C and D. Put back in the 3 acres. Page 3, section H, delete the word material, delete the letter M in front of MSDS. Same thing goes for section I. And then change the surety section to include the words, "a small ground array shall be exempt from posting surety, but shall record an agreement for the decommissioning and removal in land evidence records. Surety shall be held by the planning board until such time as the planning board votes to release the funds," will be inserted before the last line in the red line version of that statement. Delete National Grid and change that to Electric Distribution Company. And that is it.
Second.
A small system.
About the small one getting
Small
out.
system that is no longer operational must be removed prior to their sale.
Personally, I think that's,
Oh, you didn't want that
based
in there?
based on the state commentary, I don't think we should have it in there, because other communities don't do that.
And it's buyer beware. If you're going to buy a house and you're going to look on the roof and you see a crappy system up there, you're going to tell the person
Well,
you're buying
you're
off to
Okay,
remove
You're
it.
going
right.
to have a home inspection. It's
Right.
going to tell you whether it's
All
working
that's
or
done.
not.
There's no need to have that in there. If you buy a house with a bad system, you're an idiot.
So I have a motion on the floor and a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Against? Do I have another motion to return this to the planning board and bring it back for our next meeting and continue the hearing?
I'll make that a motion.
Do I have a second? Motion's been made in second. All those in favor? Against? Thank you.
Just one word of clarification from the legal counsel. Can the planning board actually take this up at our March 6th meeting without an advertised public hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
We can do that, okay?
Yes.
So that's what we'll do.
Okay, thank
And
you.
and then we'll get it right back to
And
you.
I'll put you back on the public hearing will be done in
The next meeting.
Thank you, thank you.
Public hearing.
Yeah.
I need a motion to do that.
We-
That was
we
the
just
motion.
did.
Oh, to continue the public
Yeah.
hearing.
Continue the
I'll
public.
make a motion.
No, we
4-3,
already did.
Nancy, 4-3. See,
Yeah.
Randy, Joan, and I were against.
Yeah, you know.
There goes the can.
For a week and 2 weeks. But
That's what
I'm
they say.
continuing on without any more comment. Public hearing, Stone Bridge Fire District, request for zone change from open space to R60 for Plot 221, Lot 601 with planning board recommendation. Who's here from the Stone Bridge? Could you please come forward? Welcome. Please introduce yourselves.
I'm Peter Core. I'm an assessor on Stonebridge Water Board.
Sir?
Yes, I'm Don Maderas, land surveyor and civil engineer with Able Engineering in Little Compton.
Go ahead, Peter. Do you want to present something to us? All right. I'd like to open up the public hearing on this matter. Anyone in the audience would like to speak?
How you doing?
Good.
My
State
name-
your name and address, please.
My name is Gordon Craig. I live at 57 North Christopher Avenue. I'm also here on behalf of the Brayton Woods Owners Association. I had submitted a letter back in January. It was emailed to everybody on the board on January 12th, also with a copy to the planning board, the zoning board, and also to Nancy Mello. I'd just like to make 2 points. I believe you all have a copy of this letter?
Do it in my email.
Okay. And I've only heard from one counselor, and that was Randy. I heard back from him. I did not hear any other feedback from any other counselor, so I'd like to at least have some public commentary tonight about this. So 2 things. First of all, on behalf of the association that makes up Brayton Woods, this lot, this proposed subdivision is contained within that subdivision of Brayton Woods. We've made a comment regarding the change of open space to, in this case, it would be R60. So our comment is such that if that goes through and the change is applied, not necessarily for the greater good of the town of Tiverton and its community, but rather for the betterment of a private sale after enjoying open space benefits for so long, that could set a precedence within the town, one that maybe the town should consider more deeply before they make a decision. Secondly, we want to make sure that if that change does go through, that any past taxes are collected for the betterment of the town in this case. And should you make that decision, we would like to also point out that we would like to recommend that the deeded covenants that are on that neighborhood, the Brayton Woods neighborhood, also be adopted by this 3-unit subdivision that's taking place for 2 reasons. One is it's in the domicile of that entire neighborhood. Also, the street and storm drains that that subdivision would access go into the streets that continue through a containment system that is owned by the Brayton Woods Owners Association, one that the town of Tiverton handed over to us at the time that the deeded covenants were put in place back in August of 1997. So if this is to go forward, I'd like to reiterate that we would like for you to adopt the deeded covenants. A copy of those deeded covenants were also provided along with the letter. I do have another copy here if you need that to be submitted. And we'd like to have this part of your discussion tonight and obviously a recommendation to go forward as you see fit.
Tony, can we force the developer to join their community organization or whatever? Association, I'm sorry.
No.
I didn't think we could. So we have no rights to tell the new landowner that they have to join them?
Not in connection with the rezoning.
Yeah. Tricia?
Can I ask a question of the speaker? When you say, is that, in the land evidence record, is that lot recorded as part of the Brayton Woods development?
No, it is not. However, there are no other buildable lots that are contained in that area that are connected to the storm drains which lead to our retention pond.
See, it's across the street.
Right, but I just wanted to make sure that that lot is not recorded as part of the Brayton Woods.
No, it's recorded as open space.
No, but when your development, when Brayton Woods was developed,
It was not included.
it wasn't,
It
because
was
there's a
not.
map,
Yeah.
there's a map back there that says,
Yeah, to my knowledge, it was not included in the original
it's not.
plot.
And the storm drains on Brayton Road, right? The storm drains we're talking about are on Brayton Road?
Yes.
And those storm drains from Brayton Road feed into storm drains on North and South Christopher, is
Yes.
what you're telling me?
So the way that this worked, Brayton Road ended. It was a dead end. And when Brayton Woods neighborhood was developed, it was extended all the way down into what would be ultimately South Christopher that runs first, and then North Christopher, and then line in between. So everything from where for a reference point, is where the new water meter was put in the ground, shortly, kind of a little bit past the high school. From that point forward, the North Brayton Road was extended, and North and South Christopher, as well as Line, all interconnect. All those storm drains interconnect and then feed into a large retention pond that is maintained by the Brayton Woods Owners Association in the back part of beyond South Christopher and beyond the cul-de-sacs that are on South Christopher and North Christopher.
So is that lot 219 on this map?
Can I see the map?
I'm thinking it is, but
So that lot, is it that lot back there?
219 is a retention pond.
and what's 313?
Where's 313? 313 is another abutting property. That's not owned by us.
Okay.
And so when you say you maintain that retention pond, you're responsible for it?
We are responsible for it. And what we do, since we have ownership, is we have a common insurance policy on it, a liability insurance policy, all borne out by the residents that are in that area. We also maintain it by cutting down the trees and growth so that it doesn't inhibit its ability to perform its functioning. And that's also borne by all of the residents in the form of a annual fee. That's been an establishment since the day that the association was handed over by the developer to the residents. Once the developer was finished developing that area, they handed everything over officially to us and exited. They exited the neighborhood, and we've been operating since 1997.
You know, if you note in the notice of preliminary plan decision, which is attached to these documents, the final paragraph from the planning board states that the stormwater management details will need to be addressed at the final plan. So that's something the planning board has to take up if there is a connection into this essentially private stormwater detention facility. But that's a planning board issue.
Madam President, since we have a deathly quiet here, I'm just going to put my 2 cents in, and I agree with
Mr. Craig.
Mr. Craig. I always forget first name or last name, sorry.
I have
That we
both.
can't- Gordon, we can't just willy-nilly take land out of, what's next? We give these guys what they're looking for. Somebody else is gonna come in, maybe we need a playground over here, and you're gonna cut out another piece of property somewhere and say, well, we'll spot zone this for them too. So it's a bad precedent. He's 100% correct. I stand behind him, and that's it for me. Thanks.
Are you all set?
As long as your questions are
Yeah, any
answered.
questions?
I have one more question, Mr. Craig. Do you have public water, Mr. Craig?
I do have public water.
And who's your water supplier?
North Tiverton.
You're in North Tiverton.
They got switched because I'm on the other side of the meter. I was Stonebridge when we were moved in. And because North Tiverton, I assume, got the power plant, and the meter went in between, and so the entire neighborhood flipped from Stonebridge to North Tiverton. And that happened, how many years ago? More than 5? More than 5. Whenever the power plant became operational. It is strange. As far as I know, I do believe that, I don't know how the water arrives to my house. My assumption is that it didn't change because they didn't dig up the streets and put secondary pipes in, so I assume that the water comes the same way it did before. Just a billing change.
May I ask one more question? When this application first came in front of us, Stonebridge explained briefly why they wanted to sell this piece of property. Could Mr. Corr explain to us in more detail exactly why they want to sell this piece of property?
The Stonebridge Water, we've been renting office building on Main Road for as many years as we've been in business. We thought we would like to build ourselves a new office building because we're in this for the long haul. The raising of funds to build the office building could be obtained by raising our water rates to the town, raising the water rates to North Tiverton, which would raise Mr. Clark's water rates.
Greg.
Or we could sell the only piece of land that was not, that we felt was saleable, and that it could be turned into house lots to raise money to build a new office building. I mean, that's the real reason we're doing this.
Madam President, if, Mr. Corr, you guys are a quasi-governmental agency, right?
Quasi-municipal, yes.
Yeah, so you could actually bond or go out and borrow. That's the whole point of existing as a quasi-governmental agency, so you have the authority to go out and bond.
Yes, we could borrow money,
So-
but still to pay that money back, we still have to raise the rates.
You're absolutely right, but the point that I'm trying to make is that we all know the state of the water in the town of Tiverton, right? We've got two entities that service like 4,000 people, which is absurd, right? So we have these quasi-governmental agencies that are tasked with maintaining the infrastructure, and they're granted the power to go out and bond outside of the town. And what I'm hearing is that you guys are crying poor, saying we want to build a new building, and the only way to do it is to take this open space and convert it into something that it's not going to be open space anymore, sell the lots off. You have the power to go out and bond and raise capital, and all we get is essentially, subpar service from the water districts. If we wanted somebody to be here crying poor, the town of Tiverton can certainly do that, and I don't understand why we don't just bring you guys back into the fold.
Madam
Now,
President?
with that being said, is it all right if I ask one question?
Sure, you have at it. I'm here till 11.
You were here after 11, the way this is going. My other question is, now this parcel of land, I was on the council a few years ago. When you gave some of this land to the soccer, there was gonna be a soccer field here, am I correct? At some point.
Right, but they
And
did.
then what happened was something got
Septic
messed up,
system.
the septic system.
The
For the high
history
school.
of
this-
of Stonebridge and the town is Stonebridge Water Department donated the land where your high school is now. we donated the land where your middle school is. We have a tentative agreement to donate the 7 acres of land to the soccer. We also donated the land when the high school septic system failed. And there's a reason why we're not borrowing the money. We're not handicapped accessible. The FDA refuses to loan us any more money until we come into handicapped accessible building.
But you could borrow
That's
the
the
money
truth
to
of it.
put up the building, to buy the land.
Yeah.
To buy a building to make it handicap accessible.
Yes,
Okay, that's just what I'm,
but that still requires raising the water rates.
You keep saying that, you sound like you're threatening people. If we don't do this, you're gonna raise the water rates. Raise the water rates, do what you gotta do, but you can't change open space. We can't set that precedence. We just can't, I can't do it. You have 6 other people you can convince. You can't convince me. You can't do that.
well, I always have a problem spot zoning. I really, really do. For anybody. Because I think that sets a real dangerous precedent.
I'd like to make another comment about the water rates. My cable bill just went up 30%. So every other utility goes up, electric goes up. You know, I mean, I'm not advocating that we raise rates, but everybody else raises rates, so.
Well, I just don't like the threat part of it. Well, if you don't do it, we're going to raise the water rates. And
There was no threat.
Well, but that's what it just sounds like from
right.
sitting here. That's
All
all I'm
right.
saying.
Could I just make one last comment? So
Wait a minute.
I know that you're.
Go ahead.
I know that obviously there was a lot of time taken at the last one, and I'm cognizant of that. From what I understand, you would have it within your power if you felt to adopt the deeded restrictions and covenants to have these 3 lots with buildable nature of them in an R60, if it does switch, you do have in your power to emulate what's happening around the other parts of that neighborhood. And that's the only thing that we wanted to bring to the attention, was that, you know, the neighborhood is one that we want to maintain. And if they're going to be integrated into our infrastructure, then we would like the general nature of that neighborhood to remain intact for those 3 buildable lots, if they end up to be buildable. That's the only thing that I wanted to get across. There's no other, and all of these deeded covenants are on every single other lot that's in the Brayton Woods area.
Okay, the deeded covenants came from the planning board, and it was in connection with the subdivision. Here, all they're talking about is not subdividing the property. They're talking about changing the zone. When a zone is changed, you can't place conditions on it. You either change the zone or you don't. That's under the state law. I agree with you. It's just that that's not something that the town council is authorized to do. That's something that the planning board would be authorized to do, and they've even flagged it in their note to the council. But that's not something the town council can do in connection with a zone change.
Okay. It was advertised as a subdivision. These 3 lots were going to become a subdivision. That's number 1. Number 2, there seems to be, I've attended the other meetings, and there seems to be sort of this back and forth between the planning board and the town council. So if you could make a note to at least allow that, if that's already in there, then please put an asterisk next to it. If the planning board can relook at this, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, the notice for tonight's meeting is for the public hearing Stonebridge Fire District request for zone change from open space to R60 for Plat 221, Lot 601, with planning board recommendation. I understand exactly what you're saying, but these guys don't have the authority under state law to do what you're asking them to do. The planning board does, and they've even flagged it in their note out to the council.
Okay.
That's just the
Okay.
way the law is.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else from the audience like to speak?
He's got a lot of ledge down here. A lot of ledge in the town.
Good evening, Randy Costa, 20 North Christopher Ave. I am in a butter to the property. The only question I have is if these properties do not contribute to the maintenance of the detention pond, does that mean the town is going to volunteer to take over the detention pond? since there are private properties now discharging into that system.
Yeah, gee, that's really a planning board thing that you gotta
It's not
discuss
a-
over there.
Okay.
I hate to keep saying this because it almost seems like
Right.
I'm not, I'm advising the council not to address your issues, but just as a matter of law, the only issue they have is whether or not this changes from open space to R60. Now, those might be arguments why it should stay in open space, but that's not something that they're gonna be able to answer in connection with this public hearing.
So is it in their purview to refer this back to the planning board and not take up the zoning change at this time?
No.
Gee, I really don't want to advise that after the last one. But it's, the only question here is whether or not it goes to the R60.
Okay.
That's the only thing we're concerned about.
Correct, yes.
And then from that point, the planning board would have to be the person who decides your other problem. Trish?
In general, I hate to see open space go away. I also, though, understand Stonebridge's position, and while some people are okay with getting their water rates raised, there are an awful lot of people in this town, especially seniors, for whom, any rate is going to be difficult. And I would, even though water rates aren't controlled by the town, I'd still hate to see certain seniors all of a sudden have their water bill go up because we couldn't find a resolution. And it sounds to me as though the neighbors are amenable to a solution that would include continuance or adherence to the deed restrictions and some sort of plan for stormwater management, and either there has to be a stormwater management plan that doesn't involve their retention pond, that's the responsibility of the developer, or if you're going to tie into it, that they have to participate. Would Stonebridge consider working out an arrangement or an agreement that they would, if in fact we change the zone on this and that this planning board approve the subdivision? Because I think there's a subdivision plan in front of the planning board for this, am I not mistaken?
Yes.
At their next meeting. That if that could be worked out, it seems like everybody could agree. And so maybe the thing to do would be to see if you can sort that out first and then ask us to change the zone. Just saying, because
Well, I don't really-
the neighbors are offering that they're okay with this as long as certain conditions are met. And I also do understand Stonebridge's, position that they don't really want to raise the rates to have to upgrade to a handicap accessible building. And I do know that the USDA has told them, because they've been telling you this for years, I believe, that they're not giving you any more low-interest loans for infrastructure until you fix the handicap accessible problem. So, everybody here's trying to get to some place. Maybe we could get there.
But the issue really isn't whether or not they're part of the association. The issue in front of us right now is, can we make this, can we change the zoning on it? Are we willing to do that?
Yes,
That's the only issue in front of us.
yes.
It is, but what I'm suggesting is maybe with a week or two, they could work out a solution between the neighbors and Stonebridge Water, and come back to us, and if they have an agreement or an arrangement that's suitable to everybody, then we could consider it then.
Excuse me, Madam President, could I address a couple of things? One, I'd like to address the drainage. But before that, I heard a comment earlier where it was described as spot zoning. I don't think that this falls into the category of spot zoning. We are talking about one parcel of land. It is just under 5 acres. However, when you look at the zoning district of the neighborhood, you've got the land on the west side of North Brayton Road, North Christopher, South Christopher, Ledger Lane, all the way down to Bulgamarsh Road. That's all zoned R60. When you look at the land on the east side of North Brayton Road, coming up from Bulgamarsh, you've got residential properties, R60, you've got the high school, R60, you've got the new Ranger School, which is R60. So R60 is to the south, and it wraps around to the west and to the north. So we don't believe it's spot zoning because there's an interesting history to this. The fire district bought this 40-acre parcel of land in 1965. It went from North Brayton Road easterly all the way down to Stafford Pond. Okay, and it was zoned open space. In 1999, when the town needed to build the new Ranger School, they went to the fire district, and the fire district gifted 16 and a half acres to the town, a gift.
I was
to-
on the school
to-
committee then,
To build
so
the
I know
school,
this is-
okay. So, but it was still zoned open space. So at some point after the gift, that Ranger School property got rezoned to R60. Now, we weren't able to find any clear records as to how that happened, and we know that it had to be because a school is not allowed in an open space zone. So what we believe is by oversight, when that Ranger School, 16 and a half acres, was rezoned to R60, there was an oversight that didn't include this 4 acres out in the front. So that was the one point. We don't believe it's spot zoning. The other thing regarding the drainage, now, when the North Christopher, South Christopher Ave subdivision went in, the process in the town, of course, it's a major subdivision, it goes before the planning board. North Brayton Road, a public way, had to be extended by the developer to allow the subdivision. That went through the planning board, and in the planning board process, the planning board's engineers reviewed the engineering done by the developer, which included drainage. So, and I'm not sure, Mr. Craig, is South Christopher Ave and North Christopher Ave, are those public roads or are those private roads? Those are public roads.
The entire
Okay.
neighborhood has been accepted as public, but the association owns the pond, and all the storm drains dump into the pond that is owned by Brayton Woods Owners Association.
So, thank you. So at the time when that subdivision was done, obviously the engineers designed the drainage to account for the lots within the subdivision itself, the extension of North Brayton Road, and with good engineering practice, any upgrading areas that would be draining to that area. So that's one thing. Let's put that aside for a second, but we mentioned that as a planning board issue, and that's something the planning board would and should be looking at with the subdivision that's before them. As part of the subdivision that's before them, the 3 residential lots, we're not extending a road, we're doing frontage lots, and the drainage for each lot is going to be dealt with on the lot itself. Yes, we are upgrading it. So yes, eventually, water will flow to North Brayton Road, it'll flow into the drainage system, it'll flow through the South North Christopher Ave system, down to the detention pond. However, if the drainage is designed properly, that won't be an increase in rate or volume that will be detrimental. And so, correct. So what we would ask is, and on the lines of what the council sounded like might have been proposing is, let's make sure the planning board has this in the forefront of their site when they're reviewing the continuation of the subdivision. We'd be happy to take up the drainage with the planning board. That's their purview, and as the proponent, that's what we have to demonstrate to their satisfaction. Thank you.
Joe Bento, 536 Highland Road. I just had a question. Does the town belong to this association on North Christopher and South Christopher? Well, I would assume that the Ranger School drains down that way also, the road into that.
I was thinking about that a little, but I don't think, it's not. Come comment.
Okay, so there is history there. When the school was being built, the 2 grates that are at the end of the Ranger School entrance, right, which is on an incline, were originally connected to our retention pond. And then subsequently, without much involvement by the association, they were disconnected, and a dry well was built underneath the rock that now says Ranger School off to the side. Also, I believe, could actually be on that first lot that you're talking about with an easement there. There's a dry well that was put in, and those 2 grates were connected. So they're not, the Ranger School does not drain into the storm system on North Brayton, North Christopher, or South Christopher.
I think you cut Stu, but I'm
Oh,
sure
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay. No, it's all right, Sally. Yeah. It's all right, Sally. Well, he wasn't paying attention.
I just wanted to point out that we do have a meeting of the planning board coming up on March 6th, and we do have Stonebridge on our agenda, just as a placeholder, depending on what you did tonight. They have not submitted an application for the next stage of review yet, so that has not yet been certified as complete or incomplete, so we can't do that. And Tony has left us, but my point,
He'll be right back.
the point that I'd like to have clarified is, what precisely would you like us to do? Because we do have you on the agenda, and we do have the time to do it, even though we're going to also have solar on the agenda. We did have Steer Engineering, our consulting engineer, take a look at the site, and I do have a letter in front of me from Steve Baker, our consulting engineer. He did not mention having a problem with any of the drainage issues that have come up tonight. So maybe it would be helpful if Mr. Maderas were to talk to either myself or Susan Gill, our administrative assistant, or go directly to Steve Baker, and to give us a better idea of what the issues you would like us to clarify. And then we'd be happy to do that if that would help move this process along.
Thank you, Stu.
I'm not sure what the, may I speak?
Sure.
What the ramifications are of having water runoff go through the town system and through town roads and end up in a private, privately paid for retention or detention pond or whatever they have there. I don't know who, if that's ever,
I'm gonna let
if
Sally
that's ever
talk
came
now.
up before the planning board in the 23 years I was there.
One second, let me have Mrs. Black talk.
Okay, so when we built the schools, that was a big
Just-
part of it.
this is Mrs. Black, okay.
Sally Black. That was a big part of it. Fort Bond had the rain garden that we
Yes.
built, that didn't work out too well, but Ranger School had the huge one in the back and one on the side, and for like 100-year storm, so that really worked out well, so that's where all the water goes. Took
Yes.
all our schoolyard, but that's where the water
Yeah,
goes.
I remember that.
Okay, so we'll tie this whole thing together. There's an interesting story behind this whole thing, because we are also a little dumbfounded on why town-owned roads, storm drains, grates, et cetera, flow into a privately owned retention pond that we've had to maintain.
And I was gonna ask you this, because my neighborhood, my development has a retention pond that is not privately owned, it's town-owned.
That's right.
So I was
So,
wondering
in
how
the
you ended
beginning,
up doing that.
well, no, we didn't do it on purpose. The town gave it to us. And we tried, we hired an attorney, the attorney that was used for the development, and we tried to give it back to the town because we felt that it's an entire system that is owned by the town, and now we're the beholdens of whatever comes out of that pipe into our private retention pond. And we pay tax on that retention pond. We do. It's non-buildable property, so the taxes are fairly low. And we were told back in 98, 99, 2000, around that time frame, that the town has quote-unquote smartened up, and they're not going to take the retention pond back. We're gladly ready to give it over with unencumbered, no fees, just take it back after they accepted the streets. So we've been maintaining that since 1997, and we've all been sharing the cost associated with that equally among all the residents, and there's 51 homes in that subdivision.
It's just a little bizarre how that all happened.
It's very bizarre.
I have a huge retention pond in my neighborhood, and that's totally town-owned.
If you look at the map, it's a big area down there. There's actually two sections. One flows and an overflow into another.
All right.
Madam President, if
I
I
just
could.
wanted to see if anyone else from the audience would like to talk right now. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Just on the detention pond ownership, in the old days, the town would, when the town or the planning board would approve a subdivision that had new roads, detention basins, drainage, the town would take over the maintenance, if not the ownership. In the past several years, the town has switched over, and most towns have, to requiring the developer to create a homeowners association, which would have covenants and be responsible for maintaining the drainage, the roads, whatnot. Depending if it was private roads or if it was public roads, the roads wouldn't necessarily be included, but drainage and whatnot. So that's kind of the way it's been, and that's the way it seems to continue to go. When the planning board approves the subdivision, there's an association that's established by deed as a requirement of the subdivision approval.
Anyone else from the audience? Anyone else? I'm going to close the public hearing. Is there any comments from the council or questions? You can stay there. Anyone have any questions?
Madam President?
Yes.
I just want to reiterate that I think we need to get to the root cause of what's bringing this in front of us today, and that's the fact that we really have no idea what's going on with the quasis in our town, and we need to take a good hard look at that, because if they're sitting here crying poor over a 3-lot subdivision to go build another office building, then there's obviously something else going on, and we have no visibility into it, and yet they impact all of our constituents.
Madam President, I don't think it's a good thing to do, to take something out of open space on a little spot like that. And I appreciate everything that the water department gave to the town and everything, but it's a little spot like that. Now, it's just going to, typical of a spot zoning, may not be spot zoning, but to change it from open space now is going to set up a big precedence, because people donate land or take their tax breaks on everything, and they're going to say, well, water department did it, now let's have a subdivision over here. Just got to make sure that that's not going to happen everywhere else around town.
No,
It can only happen if you allow it.
Right, that's why I don't want to allow this one either.
I did feel a little bit I did feel a little like you, but the thing is, you are right, though. For some reason, they changed the middle school, the Ranger School property. And then we have that property. It is this little tiny space that is zoned kind of not, I don't want to say appropriate, but it's all by itself in the middle of all this R60. And now that you've explained it that way, and I was involved with the whole Ranger School development, I don't know why that wasn't somehow included in that. Would anyone like to make a motion or speak on this at all?
I would ask Stonebridge whether or not, given there seems to be room for negotiation here with the homeowners, whether or not you could have a discussion about ultimately, once these lots are subdivided, whether or not you'd be amenable to some sort of arrangement about the storm detention, and to at least, consider whatever the deed restrictions on the properties are. They may not be that onerous. And, possibly withdraw your request for now, see if you can come to some sort of agreement. I mean, Stonebridge the district has done a lot for the town and has donated a lot of land, and it does seem very odd that this one piece is here. But I do think that while the planning board can do it, it would be nicer, I think, if you might consider taking a little time to try and work it out with the homeowners in the neighborhood before you ask us to make this zone change.
I think Mr. Clark.
Craig.
Mr. Clark.
I don't even know
It's
what
Gordon,
his name is.
Gordon Craig.
Gordon Craig.
I got you.
Is it Gordon Craig? I'm sorry. I agree that the drainage issue, that there is an issue down there. If we were putting water onto that by our subdivision, we may have some liability. to fund some of his retention or detention bond. That would have to come up to the Stonebridge Water Board members to look at. Do you have any thoughts on it?
All right. So what are you suggesting, Trish?
Well, I just suggested it. I suggested that potentially these two groups meet, you know, and see if they can come to some sort of agreement. I mean, the planning board can force you into something with regard to the you know, the retention pond, in theory, right? But I thought potentially you could, because it doesn't seem to me that the neighbors are opposed to this being removed from open space. They don't seem to be really removed from it, opposed to it being removed from open space. Their concern is the retention pond, their liability around that, and they also are somewhat concerned probably in that they have a set of deed restrictions, and they'd like to see if you'd be interested in potentially adopting some of them for your neighborhood. Am I stating that the right way, Mr. Craig? So,
Yeah. Would it be okay? I know the public session's over. Would it be okay if I make one comment in context of this? So you're stating that perfectly, because it's not a matter of trying to ultimately block this completely. We just want that if it does go through and the zoning does change, we would want the character of the entire neighborhood to remain intact, because these three lots are going to be placed directly into the Brayton Woods neighborhood. There's no other buildable lots around in that neighborhood. So if you look at the plot map, you see all of the lots all the way around, and then across North Brayton are ultimately these three buildable lots. So as you enter the neighborhood and you see the sign Brayton Woods, these lots are going to be, for all intents and purposes, integral to that neighborhood. And also, I believe that Stonebridge Fire District has other open space. This is not the only open space that they have around that area.
it isn't, but I believe it's one of the few that's not in the watershed.
It's the only one that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so to
the rest
speak.
of them are in the watershed,
It-
and no one would want them to.
Madam President, if I could just address Ms. Patricia Hilton's recommendations about the drainage. I think speaking for the district, I think we're more than amenable to going over the drainage with a fine-tooth comb and making sure that the detention basin in the north-south Christopher Brayton Woods subdivision is protected and not adversely impacted. However, the drainage conversation we want to have with engineers. We don't want to have it with lay people, no disrespect.
Madam
We think
President,
that
the public is over. We can't keep changing the rules here. Everybody's going to be talking. It's over. So I'll call point of order on this, and we can't be doing it.
Are we the public or the
No.
applicant?
No,
They're
you're
the
public,
applicant,
but
they're
still
not the public.
You brought it to the council.
But they're the applicant that is asking us for this.
The same thing over and over and over and over.
All right, well, I'm going to ask if anyone on the council would like to make a motion, and if not, then this is tabled. Just
I would like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Randy.
My motion is to not approve moving the property 601 out of open space.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Motion's been made in second. All those in favor? Opposed? 5-2. Next motion.
I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but I would like to make the motion, whatever what Councilor Hilton was saying, that if these two groups could get together, is that something that can make, you can't do it as a motion?
And I hate to say this, but you
That's-
want to continue,
Right.
you want to continue the public hearing for a month.
No, you know what, though? Is this really something that we can force anyone to do?
We're just
They have
asking them.
to-
We're asking them.
Yeah, but they have to go through the planning process. And when the planning board looks at all of this, they may require them to go into that drainage system.
Yes.
Because there might not be any other way to do it.
Yes.
So what they're really asking us tonight, I believe, is whether we want to change the zoning here. Because isn't this a planning board issue?
It is, but in the context of this public hearing, you heard from the public, you can certainly continue it for a month. And, you know, hopefully in that time, maybe the applicant can make some accommodations, either in the planning process or out, and then come back. You can do that.
Counselor Shabbat, you wanted to say something?
Well, I just want to ask maybe a question or two. So, if they go to planning and we still have this drainage issue, would it be appropriate for the association, Brayton Woods Association, to come back to the council and request that the town take ownership of the swales, the retention pond?
You can,
I'm
but-
putting it out there as a question.
You can, but I've got to tell you that whoever was speaking is actually correct. What the town does now in connection with these things is, all of them are going private. And I know the planning board has been requiring homeowners associations to take the ownership of these type of drainage structures. And Stu, I don't think I'm incorrect on that.
That's correct, that's our
Yeah, so that would go against, you know, basically what the town's policy is now. Those days of having homeowners, of having drainage structures and retention ponds being owned and maintained by the town, that's something that this town has gotten away from.
All I know is every time we have a homeowners association, we have issues and problems, and it always is retention ponds, the
Yes.
dam, and all that stuff. It just,
It's a lot to do with drainage and water.
right, and, exactly. And particularly when the town accepts the streets as public streets, it convolutes the issue. And then my only other comment is actually to Stonebridge Water District. Is there any way that you can, like, share space with North Tiverton Fire District, or share office space with the Tiverton wastewater, so that you can become compliant? If you're renting now, can you rent someplace else that's compliant?
If they shared with the North Tiverton Fire District, it would make it easier for us to ask the state to put them together.
If we ever wanted to do that, but that's a whole other.
But I was thinking there's a brand-new building for the
Yeah.
Tiverton wastewater. I'm not sure if they have, it seems to be a big building for the wastewater. And I didn't know if you could rent out part of that.
So they could get a low-interest loan, that's what you're talking about, so they have all the access they need? Right.
They need the ADA access in order to continue on to get loans. And that is an issue, and that, we don't want to prevent them from their livelihood. But if they could, it's just another solution that's a potential solution.
We looked at several buildings to rent, and the board thought, because we're in this for the long haul, that we didn't want to be back in the position when we were renting from someone and really have no control.
All right, I'm going to try to end this a little bit. It's 9 o'clock. Christine, you can make the motion to table this until the next meeting, until the planning board can look at this development and work with the two entities and see if we can come back with a solution. You can't make that motion.
Okay,
Am I-
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion been made and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Against?
Okay, so.
Oh, no, I'm in favor.
Okay.
So when is the public hearing continued to?
Next meeting.
Well, that's what I was going to do next.
Next meeting?
That's
No.
isn't that your motion?
You
And what-
said, you said a month, I thought. Well, March 26th.
That was
gonna
the
take a
next
month.
motion that has to be made, right? To continue
Yes.
the public hearing for 1 month.
Yes.
It's going to be a busy night.
What?
The 26th is going to be a busy night.
Not much busier than what we're dealing with right now. It's 9 o'clock. I just got to do 2 items. Yeah, I know. All right, well, so who makes that motion to to continue it 1 month.
I'll make the motion to continue as 1 month.
Second.
Okay, motion been made in second. All those in favor? Thank you. All right,
There is
thank you.
incentive, Joe, there is incentive
Yes.
to get this done for you.
All right, the people in the audience that are waiting to be heard in front of us, I'm going to try to bring you forward as I go along here and put aside some of this other stuff till I take care of who's been waiting here, and it's 9 o'clock at night. Town Council sitting as a Board of Licensing, Dolgen, Rhode Island, LLC, Dollar General Store, number 17935 11. Could we just have a little quiet, please? 1185 Stafford Road, request approval of tobacco and holiday license subject to meeting all legal requirements. Hello, gentlemen.
Welcome to Tiverton.
Would you like to introduce yourselves? Well, I see you up and down. No, go ahead.
I'm Matt Tucker. I'm the general contractor that built the store.
And Gene Duval, District Manager for Dollar General.
Any questions from the council? When are you planning on opening?
Hopefully in 2 days.
Yeah, 'cause I just went by there and it looks all stocked and
It's
everything.
going well.
Any questions from the council?
Madam President,
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the tobacco and holiday license subject to meeting all legal requirements for Dolgen, Rhode Island, LLC, Dollar General Store, number 17935 1185 Stafford Road.
Second.
Motion's been made in second. All those in favor? There you go, that was quick, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry you had to wait so long.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, good luck, and welcome to Tiverton. Planning Board, new request, 3 vacancies, term 7/15/2020, unexpired, Paul Amaral, 9 Watermark Drive. Mr. Amaral, would you like to come up to the... I think Paul fell asleep, really, because it's... I'm only teasing.
Ready to talk about drainage on North Christopher.
Paul, would you like to give us a brief resume, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you would like to be on the planning board?
I think you have my application that pretty much explains it. People know pretty much what my views are. Those views haven't changed. Unless there are any questions, I really have nothing to say on my behalf of my self-advocacy.
How would you, okay. Any questions from the council? Go ahead.
Mr. Amaral, you're currently a member of the Board of Canvassers, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And I only say that just because in the boards and commissions policy, under normal circumstances, according to our written policy, there is a note in here about, as a general rule, no person shall be appointed to serve concurrently on more than one board. So if that were the case, is there one of these or the other that you, the Board of Canvassers that you're on now, or the Planning Board that you feel more strongly about?
That's new information to me. I thought according to the charter that there was no restriction on the number of boards or
It's actually
commissions.
not in the charter, it's the Tiverton Town Council policy for boards and commissions. It's not that it's impossible, it's just, as I said, it says generally. So I'm just asking if that were the case, is there one that you feel more strongly about?
I guess my view on that would be, I'm already on the Board of Canvassers. So if you were going to restrict me to one, I would remain with that one.
Madam President, I would like to waive that.
Well, there are a couple of people that are on more than one board and commission right now. So
Definitely a couple that are doing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can think of 2 off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's more. Okay, do we make the appointment this evening because this is the first interview, or do we?
There are vacancies on that board.
Joan, would you like to say something? I can tell you.
Yeah, I would
go ahead.
just like to ask Mr. Amaral, have you reviewed the comprehensive plan?
I have superficially, but I have.
Have you reviewed the subdivision regulations?
No, ma'am.
Have you attended planning board meetings?
No, ma'am. No.
Is there a specific reason why you would like to volunteer for the planning board?
It's one of my main areas of interest in the town.
And meaning planning is?
Planning development.
Planning development. Okay. Are you also associated with any conservation groups?
Yes, I'm a member of the Land Trust.
But you're not on, and you're not a director or any of the
Board member?
board member on?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Paul Emerald to the planning board for, what is it, 1-year term, 3-year term?
Do we have
What's-
to, do
how
we have
long's
to
it
motion
for?
to make a waiver our normal process first?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We do.
Make a
Yeah.
motion to waive the normal process.
I'll second you, Joe.
Motion's been made in second to waive the normal process. All those in favor? Do I have another motion?
And now I'll make a motion to appoint Paul Emerald to the planning board. And for how long is that, Nancy? Because it doesn't,
Put it on there.
7/15/2020.
Yeah, term to
Oh,
expire
I'm sorry. Till-
7/15/2020.
It's an unexpired term.
okay.
Second.
Till
Second.
7/15/20.
I have a motion in a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, Paul. Welcome to the planning board.
Thank you.
Good luck.
You're going to need it.
Okay. All right, so we've interviewed for the municipal court judge last week. We have candidates Court B. Chappelle, Gerard Andrew Galvin, Robert H. Humphrey, and John A. Paglini. What I'll do is what I've done before when there's multiple candidates, I'll ask for motions on appointments, and then everyone give me their motions, and then we'll vote accordingly.
Madam
Madam
President?
President.
Okay, we'll start, who said it first? Well, we'll start with Joe, go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Robert Humphrey.
Second.
Come on, Joe.
Do I
Second.
have a second?
Steal my nomination.
Okay, motion's been made in second.
Madam
Do I
President,
have another one? Go ahead.
John Pagliarini.
Chris Ryan.
Second.
I have a motion for John Pagliarini in a second. Anyone else? Now, Tony, I always forget which one do I vote on first,
The first motion,
which is Robert H. Humphrey.
yes.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor for Robert H. Humphrey and a second. All those in favor? 5 against, 2 is Robert H. Humphrey. Congratulations, Mr. Attorney Humphrey.
Thank you.
Personnel Board, new request, 1 vacancy, term expiring 10/15/2020, unexpired, Laurie Robinson, 35 Campion Avenue, Tiverton. Is Laurie here? Hi, Laurie. I'm going faster, Laurie. You noticing? Yeah.
I noticed.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to be on the Personnel Board.
Sure. I've been a resident of Tiverton for 11 years. I previously commuted out of town. I got a new job where I'm more local, so I am looking to get more involved, get to know more people. I have a little bit of an HR background, so that's why I thought the Personnel Committee would be a good fit.
Any questions from the council?
I just had a question. Do we have, how many vacancies do we have on that? Just that one?
No, we have more than one.
That's what I thought.
Nancy?
I have one.
Oh, yeah, we really do. It just, one's in Florida, that's why they look
Right.
smaller.
I only have one.
That's what it is,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Anyone else would like,
I just have a question. How long have we had the singular vacancy? Just
Oh,
been
wow.
like a week, right, or a couple months? How long?
No,
Rogers.
she, a couple of months.
Okay.
And it's been advertised.
All right.
entertain a motion?
Motion to waive our normal policy.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion been made in second. All those in favor? Joe left us, but I guess that's okay. Another motion, please.
Motion to appoint Lori Robinson, 35 Campion Ave, Tiverton, to the Personnel Board, one vacancy, term to expire 10/15/2020.
Second.
Motion's been made in second. All those in favor? Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to bring up new business. One, Attorney Mark Russo requesting schedule of public hearing on proposed ordinance amendments regarding casino liquor license and hours of operation.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Joe.
All right, 1A is Chapter 6, Article 1, Section 6.2 regarding casino license, Class B6. Chapter 22, adding Article 3 regarding hours of operation for a casino gaming facility with casino gaming and entertainment overlay district, CGE. Mark? You're requesting it's very simple. You're requesting a
Yes.
public hearing. I did have a meeting with Mark and, who else was with us?
John Taylor,
John Taylor,
Kim Ward.
Anthony DeSisto, and Nancy. And we did discuss this. We decided the best way to do this is have a public hearing, which we had to have date uncertain right now, but we were thinking sometime in March.
Yes, if that's possible, yes.
And we will, now, I think something I learned that's very interesting, if we grant the 24, if we grant them to remain, I just gotta think about this for a minute. If we grant that they serve liquor till 2 a.m., it's automatically, they stay open 24 hours per legislation. Am I correct? Am I correct, Toby?
Well, it's actually the other way around. In order for them to stay open till 2 o'clock, they have to have the 24-hour license.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's what it is. So if we give them a 2 o'clock license, no, if we give them the 24, they have to stay open till 2.
Yes.
Okay, that's what it is, so just keep that in mind. I know, it's part of,
To give them a 24-hour license, they have to stay open till 2.
Right.
I mean,
It's
no,
in-
they have to,
In order to serve until 2,
Yeah.
it's
They have to be
it's a
open for
condition
24
that you have a 24-hour operator.
It's a
That doesn't mean
condition.
that you can serve 24, you
Right.
can serve to
Right.
2, but you have to be a
It's just, I'm
24-hour
really-
operator.
It's a condition to issue a BC license, which is what they're asking for here.
so what I'm saying is, if you say, yes, they can be open till 24 hours, but you want them to stop serving liquor at 1, that can't happen. 24 and 2. Right, I'm right
No.
about this.
No, it could.
You could put a condition on the BC license that they close at 1.
That's not what we discussed. That is not what we discussed. This is the first, okay, fine. So what is the condition again?
In order to get the BC license,
Right,
they have to be open 24 hours. If
like I
they're-
said originally.
Yeah, if they're not open
That's what I
24
said
hours,
originally.
then they can't get their BC license.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
Right. I guess I confused it. No, I think that's what I said originally, though.
Confused me.
But anyway, so we were thinking sometime in March. Is that okay with everyone? Take out your books, right, Nancy, you want us to schedule it? We're
We
gonna
need
have
3
it at the-
weeks?
We're gonna have it at, we're gonna have it at Tiverton High School, because sometimes it's best to be,
oh, so we have to, so it's not necessarily a council meeting, it's a special?
It's a public
It's a
hearing.
pu-
it's a public hearing, and I want to do it special.
Yep, okay.
Because we'll have another. So how many days?
March
So
32nd.
how many days do I need for it?
10 days.
Okay. March what?
March 32nd. Oh, so-
I was thinking of March 19th, because it's a Monday and it's an opposite town council. Is March 19th? Sorry.
I'm just checking availability.
Is March 19th good enough?
do you have enough time to advertise?
Yes, it's 10 days.
Do we want to go
I do
out?
have to check with the school to make sure it's available. So
We could do
just give
April
me 2
2nd.
days.
Do March 27th, the Tuesday,
I would prefer not the 27th.
okay.
What's that?
And the 28th, it's a Wednesday.
No, 27th.
But you'll still be in Florida, Kim?
No, I come back.
It's just that one day.
My flight will be late.
Oh, you come back the
Patty and I
19th,
will-
okay.
When are you coming back?
The 19th, that's why I'm.
Me too.
All right.
We get on the same
I
flight.
don't want to say yes, and then God forbid the flights get.
Okay, so
28th, Wednesday night? Is
well, why
Wednesday
don't we
good?
do it that week sometime? Why don't we
Because
do
their plane might get delayed, they might be stuck there for 2
March
days.
21st?
I'm just planning ahead.
How about March 21st on a Wednesday?
It's fine with me.
It's not Randy's date night, so he should be all right, right?
Yeah, I don't have anything on here.
Okay. March 21st, okay with everyone?
That's okay, yes, thank you.
And if there's any follow-up, guys, go
Ma-
let me know right away.
Did you say March 29th?
First.
21st.
Joe was out here spouting off about that
And
week.
I'm going to invite Lincoln officials to join us in the audience in case there's any questions that they can answer about being open 24 hours. I'm also going to ask the state police to be there. We had an interesting conversation with the state police concerning 24 hours that I want you all to hear.
7 p.m.?
7 p.m. at the library. So I'll
High
be
school.
High school.
At the high school auditorium.
Oh, we're having, okay. All right.
And if you guys can think of anyone else you would like to be at this public hearing in case we have questions. But we did have a meeting with the state police, and they had some interesting theories about the 24 hours that I'd like the council to hear.
Now, since it's a public meeting, the local bar owners can show up. and-
Anyone can show up,
and
and
speak,
anyone
okay.
can speak.
Yeah, we very much support that because this is a program we've been operating for a while in Lincoln. So that experience, both at the police, law enforcement level and Lincoln officials, I think that's a good series of questions for you to ask.
Well, and also I had Tony and Nancy and I had a Chief Jones was there with us. We had a very interesting conversation with them, and it was some stuff that some information they gave me, I did not think of it that way, so I really would like them to talk with the council. So I'm going to ask Pat to get in touch with them for us and see if they can get them to the 21st meeting. And if anyone thinks, meanwhile, of anyone else you'd like to be there, contact Nancy and we can get that to happen.
State delegation?
Yeah, they certainly can come. Yes, and we'll invite them. We'll put out an invitation to them. And I'm sure when you all go home, you might think of someone else, just call Nancy. And I'm sure the casino will be open to anyone that we would like to
Sure.
invite.
Yeah,
to
if
give
members of
more-
the council think of anything they'd like presented that night, as they think about it more, just let us know, either through the solicitor's office or through Nancy's office, and we'd be happy to make sure we're prepared to answer any questions.
Mark, I have one I never got an answer for yet. I wanted
Sure.
to know how many felonies arrests there were on the last time that you were sitting here, and I never got an answer for it.
Sure, yeah, Lincoln has all that, those
Yeah, I just
records, I'll
wanna
get
make sure
those
I
for
have
you.
that.
Sure.
Yeah, we will get you that information.
Are you going to do a presentation that night? Or just-
Yes.
Oh, you
But
are?
we'd like to,
Okay,
yes,
do the
yeah.
presentation,
Oh,
okay.
they are, and then I thought we'd have other members,
Okay.
other people in the audience, in case, publicly,
No,
there's
just- it's
questions.
fine, yeah.
And I would really like you to hear what the state police have to say also. So that's why I'm going to invite them. And I think Chief Jones agrees with me that the state police really need to speak with the council and give the information they gave us about staying open.
We feel very strongly that it's a conversation we need to have locally here, and it's your discretion, but if you exercise your discretion, we think it's important that it be pursuant to an ordinance, because then the town, who we have a relationship with, if they feel we violated something, they can have the hearing, they can issue the notice. Whereas if you do it at the state level, you don't have that. So we're much more comfortable. We think the conversation is with you guys. So whatever you need us to present, whatever questions we can answer, I'll get the statistics for you. Whatever else you can think of, just let us know.
And I'll call you if I think of it. Well, I'll
Yeah.
go through Tony.
Sure.
And I did talk to John Taylor about the state police asking, because I wanted to make sure that we could make sure that the state was good with them. And he told me whoever I wanted to invite
That's
to make the
entirely up to you.
public more comfortable with what we're discussing. He was open to anyone.
Yeah.
So, all right? All right, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're back to E1 now?
Wait a minute, let me just look. Yes, it's back to E1. Counselor Hilton?
Do I need a motion?
No, I think we can just.
No, we just-
schedule it.
Okay, we just go to-
Counselor Hilton?
E1, thank you Solicitor DeSisto for writing up this resolution, which acknowledges the town of Tiverton's opposition to Senate Bill S2045 and House Bill H7200 regarding sports wagering as the bills stand today. I think it's important for us to be on record with the state legislature that these particular bills are not acceptable to us. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt these resolutions, ask the president to sign them, and send them to our legislative delegation as well as the House and Senate committee chairs.
Second.
Discussion?
Go ahead.
Just a couple of points on some of the language included in here. The third whereas, where it talks about, the state-operated, video lottery games and state-operated casino gaming such as table games, and then the phrasing of the question that indicated to voters that approval will be limited to video lottery games and table games. If you read the actual state enabling legislation for the bill, it does specifically reference this type of gaming, and I'm concerned that we may be indicating that we're putting forward something that in and of itself is misleading. And secondly, I think that we're now 2 months into the legislative session, and we have yet to invite our state delegation to come and talk to us. And I think that would be a good starting point before we arbitrarily send them something in the mail saying, hey, take it and, pound sand. I think that we should be interacting with our state delegation and have open lines of communication rather than just blindly sending things up to the State House. And I would rather see that be the first course of action rather than just blindly sending a resolution up to the State House.
Tony, I have a question for you.
I guess I'm the chair now, so
Yeah,
Council
well,
LeBeau.
with this legislation that's being presented, if it does pass, does Tiverton have a choice in the matter whether there is sports betting or not?
No.
No, so if it passes, we're stuck with it no matter what, so this resolution is not really gonna go anywhere unless it doesn't pass. Like, my biggest concern is if we're gonna have that kind of gaming in there, that it gets added into our cup.
Okay.
That's it. That's all I would like it to say. If you're gonna do it and pass it, I want our cup.
All right, under the current legislation, the host communities would not get any of the revenues generated by sports gaming. And furthermore, there's no say as to whether or not the sports gaming would go in. If this legislation passes, it would allow for the state to just have it put into these facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? I have
Yeah.
a motion on the floor in a second. Okay, go ahead.
I guess I'm leery about, I don't mind having a discussion with the reps, but I know that things happen fast up there. And when we tried to have a resolution against the, for the agriculture, it was like, oh, they're not going to pass anything, they're not going to have a resolution, and bingo, like that. They passed it, and it just happened so fast. I don't think this is a bad idea to have, because I think it's, I guess I have a question too for you, Tony. It would be in the facility, it would be in the Tiverton facility, so you're not saying that, the state's not saying that they own the facility, right?
They actually do.
They own it?
Well, they really do.
Oh.
Yeah.
But, okay, so Twin Rivers is also not getting a cut, is that right?
At this time.
Under the.
Yes.
under the-
You should join us.
under- They're not going to do that, but under the.
I know they're not gonna do
Under
it.
the legislation is proposed,
Yeah.
unlike the current statutory scheme, where there's a determination as to where the various revenue streams go to the local community, to the state, to the, that's not present in the current legislation. So as contemplated, it appears from the legislation that the entire revenue would go to the state.
Right.
And I know that you've read in the newspapers that the professional sports leagues have a lobbyist now, and they're asking for a cut too. The experience in Nevada with legalized sports gambling has been, the federal government gets 25%, so.
Yep.
It's a difficult situation as it is now. The resolution that I drafted is narrowly tailored to those provisions that have been submitted in the Senate and that have been submitted in the budget bill that's in there. But to answer Randy's question and yours, that's part of it.
So if I understand you correct, casino gets nothing either.
Well, under this current legislation, there's no provision for that.
Yeah.
As I read it, and it might be an incorrect reading, it seems as though, the revenue would go directly to the state.
I think this is going to move. I think this is not going to be the end of it. I can't imagine that Twin Rivers would just say, okay, that's fine with us.
Well, no, it definitely has to be worked out, and,
And that's the only reason I want to have this resolution in there. It's got to be worked out.
Yes.
And do you know also if Lincoln is also doing one of these?
They
'Cause
haven't taken up such a resolution yet. They meet once a month.
Yep.
They meet the third Tuesdays of the month. So their next meeting is coming up. The other thing, too, is the Supreme Court heard the arguments today, I believe,
Right.
as to whether or not this is even lawful.
Right.
So there's a lot of moving parts.
Yes. That's why I think it's not a bad idea to have our moving part in there.
Any further discussion?
Madam President, just two comments. One about having the state delegation actually come before us. In the entire time since I've been here, I think we've seen our state delegation when they swore us in, and then when they came to present a citation. Meanwhile, our neighbors across the river have had our state delegation there to ask them for things on a regular basis. And I think we're missing an opportunity to communicate our views to the State House in a way that isn't so nasty in tone. And secondarily to that, I think that Councilor LeBeau brings up a good point, is that if we're going to send something up to the State House, do we want to catch more flies with honey or vinegar? And this, to me, looks like a big cup of vinegar.
Not to me.
As far as the state delegation, I just, for the record, want you all to know that I do talk to Representative Edwards, I would say at least once a month, every other week, with any concerns that have come up here and with anything that needs to be brought forward. And if we do this, I was, of course, going to call him tomorrow to give him the heads up on this.
He was also part of the subcommittee, so we met on a regular basis as well.
And usually what he does is he gets the other delegates involved as he feels we need to. But I have a motion on the floor in second, so I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? 5-2. Councilor DiMadeira's approval of resolution to the General Assembly. What?
Sorry.
Expressing opposition to offshore drilling. The governor's office called me. They're trying to get all towns involved in this. They're actually going, it's not only the governor of Rhode Island, but all the other states that are listed here. Tony can explain this a little more, I believe. I think they sent all of you an email, although I didn't receive it, but he said that he sent the council an email, and I never received it. I don't know if the rest of you
Who's
did.
here? Our governor's a woman.
He is the representative from the governor's office that called me. And he said he brought this to my attention in an email, but quite frankly, I did not receive that email.
I've seen emails from David Cicilline referencing this, but that's about
No,
it.
this was, I forgot his name, Nancy. It's a very odd name. No, it is. It's Mario, no, what is it? I don't remember. Anyway, Tony, would you like to explain this? You're hilarious.
There's been a shift in the federal government's policy to allow for offshore drilling, not only on the East Coast, but also on the West Coast, too. This resolution is designed to be sent not only to the governor and the General Assembly, but also to the President of the United States, expressing your opposition to this offshore oil drilling change in policy.
And of course, it's a threat to the industry, the commercial fishing, the seafood industry on these shores. If there were to be a spill, it's devastating. And that was one of the things he brought up. And the governors of all, I think there's 5 or 6 states here, have all asked their towns and cities to support them in this. Do I have any questions?
I just have one comment about this. Obviously, I think it's important to help preserve the fishing industry. But just as an aside, the state of Rhode Island and Rhode Island DEM have made changes specifically as it relates to shellfish areas and the way that they're administered, which have crippled our fishing industry here locally. So, we should consider sending resolutions on that too.
All right, well, John, I'm going to put you in charge of doing it.
You got it.
Okay.
Madam President?
Yes.
I don't oppose offshore drilling, but on this one, I'm going to vote with you guys, but I don't oppose it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Yeah, I think it's safely done, but I am for offshore drilling, and I'm for drilling in the Grand Tetons where we can get oil, so.
Working for an oil company, I don't know if I want to vote.
You can. All right, so.
I don't think it would matter.
No. So any further discussion? All right, I'd like to, now we're going to get silly like we did the other night.
No,
All right,
no,
I'd like-
please. It's not.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution to the General Assembly expressing opposition to offshore drilling.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed? I'm sorry.
I'm going to go
so
with the
sorry.
opposed. We got to drill.
I thought I saw your hand go up. I'm sorry.
We got to drill.
Was it 6-1?
No, it's 5-2.
5-2. I changed my mind.
Councilor D. Madeira's fire chief, is he gone? Oh, no, he's behind the pole.
He's hiding behind his mustache.
Are you hiding on me, chief?
No, ma'am.
Okay, where are we? E3.
Okay, approval, I'm sorry, fire chief report on inventory and dates of air bottles and defibrillators. I put this on here because at our budget committee discussions, and also my discussion with the budget committee, there's been a lot of concern about air bottles that have expired and defibrillators that aren't working. Later on in the agenda, you'll notice that Nancy has put together a way to purchase 25 for this year, which I hope you do immediately, and if it's approved. And then we have put in the budget for 25 more. Now, I see you have 68, and I understand that. I just want to ask a couple of questions.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
All right, these air bottles are 10 years and they expire.
I will, let me correct the statement. I have made an
Because I've
error.
looked into
I have made, there are 2 carbon fiber bottles and then Luxfer carbon fiber bottles. I thought we had straight carbon fibers, which are 10 years. I have Luxfers, which are 15. So these bottles that are 2004, within the next 12 months, have to be decommissioned. So it doesn't, the timeframe, we are not running right now without bottles. I misspoke, I gave misinformation, and I'll take full blame for that. But again, I'm still looking, right now my count is 57 bottles that will expire within the next 12 months.
So, my next question. I know more about air bottles than I ever wanted to know in my entire life after this week. When I found out that these air bottles should be tested yearly,
Every 5 years.
okay, all the literature that I was reading the other night said a year. I also inquired with a couple of fire departments. They said a year also, but it's every 5 years?
Visually, they can be visually inspected, like dive tanks from visually inspected area. Every 5 years, a hydrostatic test. We take them out to New Bedford, where there is, I think it's New Bedford Welding that's out there. That's where we take all of our bottles to.
So these bottles were probably tested in '09?
Yes, all our bottles have been regularly
And they were
tested.
tested in '14?
Some have not been tested yet in 14. I still have a batch to take out. That was depending. When they're tested in 14, they will not be, after that, they're not getting an extension past the 15
So it's the
years.
15 years.
15 years is a drop dead mark.
Now, the next question, when you buy an ear pack, you get a bottle, correct?
Depending on how you order the bottle.
Is that the way you've been doing it?
I did in the beginning, but then when we stayed at the $25,000 mark, to be able to afford the full packs, to get 3 packs, I was buying just straight packs.
Okay. See, I told you, I know more about this than I ever thought I
not a
know in my
problem.
life.
But when you buy a pack,
Okay.
you get a bottle with it, right? Comes with a bottle.
Not
No,
always.
You can buy them separate.
You can buy them without
I
it.
found that out when I looked at the.
Right.
When
But
you go to
you buy them
Scott's
with
Air
the
Packs, you can find.
Not the
everything.
past 2 batches. We've been able to buy 3 at a time because the prices jumped so much on the air packs that in the last 2 batches I did, I could not buy bottles
So-
and still get 3 air packs. So if I can just explain
Yeah,
a little
go
more.
ahead.
The reason for trying to keep the 3 packs, I talked a little bit about this at the Budget Committee meeting. There is, NFPA has standards for the packs. They're called bookends, and every so many years, they come up with new sets of standards for the packs. All of our older packs that we got in 2004, they will ring out at a quarter. So in other words, as a firefighter's working on it, we get down to a quarter of a bottle, the alarm will come on and say, you got to get out. It's like a diver, it says reserve air. When we started replacing, because those packs will no longer be covered under the current standards, the new standard says they have to ring at a third of their air. So I was trying not to mix them, so I'd have half ringing at a quarter, and I'd have another half ringing at a third. The standard basically says when your guys are in, and they're in a group, because they should all be working together, if one guy's pack rings, then both guys, if they're working together, should come out. So trying to avoid having a complication of mixed packs ringing at different times and causing confusion on scene, I tried to keep them all the same, so that's why I was trying to keep every truck to get 3. Usually we keep 3 on the trucks, trying to keep them all done at the time. So I was getting to that point, and then through this, when I went out to New Bedford to take the last batch out, New Bedford Welding and Supply was the last one to tell me, your bottles are no good anymore. This is it, you're done. As of next year, they gotta come out. So that's when this all came about.
So my next question.
Mm-hmm.
If we buy 25 this year, we buy, so you're telling me these 04 bottles are going to expire as of 2019?
Correct.
So if we buy 25 this year, 25 next year, and you put in the budget for whatever's remaining in July of, so 19, so as of January, they'll expire?
Depending on the dates of these
Okay.
bottles, some, within
So
the next
if-
12 months.
So if we buy 50, by July, say, we buy 50, you should be pretty okay, and then the next budget will order more. And then you'll have a rotation now where you don't have to buy all of them at once.
The interim administrator had asked me on Friday to come forward. I will be presenting to you tonight another $10,000 that I've searched within my budget to try to get that first batch of bottles up higher. So that would bring us up to 35,000, I
Yeah.
believe that's what we're looking at. So I could
So
get
it's like
35 bottles,
35
which would
bottles.
put us in better shape.
Now, my
It going-
next thing is,
Yep.
during my investigation, and I'm not telling you what to do, but I found out there's something called a Chiefs Fair, or that is taking place in June.
Mhm.
Scott's Packs are there with their bottles, and you can get bottles cheaper than what you would normally get. It's at Mohegan Sun in June.
I go there.
Okay. And during my, just going online and talking to other people, sometimes those bottles are discounted to $700 to $800 per bottle.
What we have is, because Scott is the main brand that we have, we're only allowed to go to one vendor with the Shipman's Fire Equipment. Shipman's Fire Equipment is the one we bought all the packs from. We can't go, we can't bid, no one else can, they have this territory. I can't.
So you can't go to this Chiefs thing?
I can't go there. It all has to come-
I was
yeah.
just asking because I heard that goes on.
No, I go to the New England Fire Chiefs Conference every year.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, New England Fire Chiefs Conference up there. They're having one in Worcester in next month sometime too. But sometimes they have them, but again, it's still, I have vendors that I deal with who are other Scott representatives. They will lose their ability to sell equipment if they take it away from shipments. I have no control over that part
So
of it.
how much are you saying these bottles cost?
The price I got was $990 some odd dollars, so it's about $1,000 a bottle. If we buy in bulk, I can try to see if I can get the price down. That's the difference.
Okay. So we are going to buy 35, so would they call that bulk?
I would call it bulk. There are other,
Because
what
maybe
you,
we can get 40 if we do it that way.
I can try. The other part is that,
But do you want to buy that many
Yeah,
all at
right.
once?
You
Like
don't
this
wanna
year,
do
wouldn't
that
you want
again.
to
Yeah, we end up with the same
Wouldn't
thing.
want to buy
Right,
them
but
like
just
want
be
to keep it
careful,
safe.
because
30
then we're gonna
30
take
in
this money and put it in the
2018
general.
and 30 in 2019, so that'd give you another year.
Right,
out.
I would try to stagger them out, that would be my opinion to try to do. The other thing that those people may have been told you, when you go to some of these conferences, you can buy an inferior bottle.
Oh, you
That's-
can?
Yeah, you can buy a bottle that is not manufactured by Scott, and there's been a lot of problems throughout the industry in them. There've been stories of where they've exploded inside of, sitting in the cabs
No,
of
I
trucks
just
and such.
understood that
Yeah,
Scott
that
was
you
at
can-
this. That's-
Right.
that's-
I try to stay with the Scott brand because they've been very reliable, and we've had good success with them and have not had failures with them. That's what I try to stay with. So there is possibility. I mean, you could look at a cheaper brand. There are manufacturers out there who make them, but it's not as the same quality, I
So
believe.
does anyone have any other questions about the bottles? Now, as far as the.
I think
Go ahead,
Councilor Hilton has
I'm
one.
sorry.
So Chief, in trying to understand this my own self, so one question. Are the bottles that we have the 4.5 bottles?
That is correct. 4,500 PSI bottles.
4,500 PSI, and
That's
so
correct.
all of them are the 4.5 bottles?
That's correct, 4,500 PSI.
How many air packs do we have?
I believe it's 33 packs total.
Okay, so
Again, I'm pulling that off the top of my head, so I may not be 100% accurate with that.
understand, but, and just in the research that I'm doing, it seems like most communities, it isn't a situation where everybody has an air pack. The number of air packs they have tracks to the vehicles and the equipment and how many firefighters.
Riding
go.
positions on the apparatus.
Right. So do we have 33 people on apparatus?
No, we don't have 33, but we have 33 positions that we're covering, between my car, the fire marshal's car, the supervisor's car, each one of the engines. The rescues also have packs on them. So anytime a firefighter goes into what's known as an IDLH, and immediately dangerous to life and health, we have to have a pack available for them.
Okay, but you don't have everybody on at one time.
No, but the point being is that if they are on the rescue and the packs are over on the engine and the rescue shows up at a scene, they go down to one of the fishing boats and they have to go into a confined space that has a diminished atmosphere, they have to have a pack available.
But even if you take all of our rescues, right, if you take the...
There's 4 packs between the rescues.
If you take the 4 packs from the rescues, and then you take all the positions on the truck, plus, the captains, and I'm sure you have one in your vehicle.
Absolutely.
That's 33 in total?
Again, I believe that's the number.
Because it seems to me like when I'm counting up the people who go on all those vehicles.
You're looking at bodies, we're talking riding positions on the trucks. Any place that someone can sit in the truck.
Right, but if we don't have them in the.
Doesn't matter. Riding positions I have to have covered.
Councilor Hilton, I think what he's saying is that if he and the fire marshal are sitting in the station, right, and the alarm goes off, and there's 3 guys taking out the engine, and he and the fire marshal also hop in the engine to go to the fire, there needs to be a pack available for them.
Or if there's an off-duty guy who happens to be in the
Yeah, or-
station.
yeah.
If there are 4 or 5 positions, or actually, if you sit at, each one of the engines have 5 positions in them. Because there's,
That makes sense to me.
yeah.
Plus, you have to have packs if you get to a scene of a
Guys
fire
come
and other
back, yeah.
guys come. You gotta be able to.
Yeah, if
So-
there's a fire and Joe
So-
Perry shows up, we gotta get a pack for
So you
him.
think that you have 33 packs, and therefore you need 99 air bottles?
I have 80, I believe it's 80, I don't have the number right here in front of me, it's
76.
70, around 70 some odd bottles.
And what's the number of bottles that you want to have?
But I want to maintain that same number.
So you want 76?
Yes.
So that's not, it's 2 something per, a little over 2 per air pack?
Yeah, you have one in the pack and then you have a spare one, because you also have to remember, if the guys are at a fire and they go through 2 or 3 bottles at the scene, once that truck leaves the scene, it has to be available to go to another call. They may not have time to get back to refill the bottles.
Okay.
So we try to have spare bottles available. And at any big fire, we'll go through pretty much all the bottles we've had. We've had piles of bottles trying to fill them.
Okay, so my next question is, are you pretty sure on this only because when I go back and I look at if you bought the things that you got permission from the council to buy that were in the budget when you came in front of the council, according to my count, you should have more air bottles that are post the 2004 than what's on your list.
This was an inventory that was done by the guys of every single bottle that the department owns. This was done last week at the interim administrator's request. This is every bottle that we own. We didn't have them put down the serial, there's a couple that have on tag, but they went through every single bottle in the department.
Okay. I'm just telling you that, I mean, I believe you, but I'm just telling you it doesn't match up. And last thing is, on the price on the bottles. Have the price of the bottles gone up substantially?
They go up every year.
But I mean, a lot.
The last quote I had was just under $1,000 a bottle.
Okay, because the last time that and now admittedly, this would be in 2015, so it'd be it was about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. The last time we bought bottles, they were $7.75 a piece from shipments.
Right.
But now
That
they're up to $9.90.
That's what the last quote I was, I had on bottles.
In 2 years.
Yep.
Wow. And that's why I was asking, these are the same 4.5 bottles.
Yes, exactly the
The
same.
15-year bottles.
The 15-year bottles,
The
Luxfer's bottles, yes.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because I didn't know when you had said these new bottles, you know, you're figuring $1,000 a piece for the bottles. The last time we bought them for the exact same bottles, they were, and like I said, it was about 2 years ago now, they're $7.75 a piece.
And the packs we used to buy, we used to be able to buy them at $3,800. Now they're just under $7,000.
Okay, thanks.
I can't win.
Now, the defibrillator I'm going to table for this moment
Yep,
because
no problem.
we had discussions at the budget, our budget meetings that we will try to buy the defibrillator this year so that we have working defibrillators and we don't wait till July. So we were still going over what accounts.
Do you have any questions on that I can answer for you? Because I have I have an X and an M, and the M series is the old one that's got to go out. It was bought in 2003. That's the one, and
And that's the Zoll you said that we can't replace.
Yeah,
parts at
Zoll
this
gave
point.
me a letter. That's what I'm basing that all on. Zoll saying they'll try to fix it, but they don't think they're gonna, and they're not gonna cover it anymore under warranty. That's the one that stays on the Crandall Road engine, because that engine is also a paramedic level engine.
Paramedic level
Right,
engine.
and without that, and so you'll know with what I gave you in the protocols, these are the guidelines that the paramedics have to operate by. And a lot of I know it's strong, I probably should have highlighted it for you, but in here in the end title CO2 monitoring and capnography,
Do we have?
we have
that capability?
capnography on the X series, we don't have it on the M series.
I didn't think you would on the M series. but
Right,
that's-
so without the capnography or the end title CO2, we have to take the endotracheal tubes off the truck.
Well, right, because it's a very important part of that now.
Right, so we
whether or
can't have
not-
the monitor on the truck, we can't, so it kind of limits the ability of that, and we lose the ability of what we should be doing with it.
I just did my ACLS, so I understand everything you're talking about right now. All right, so
Again, if I can, Madam President, I still want to apologize to the council and everybody for that misinformation on the bottles. That
well, I was worried because
No, that was-
when I
was my
first
fault.
looked at this, I was thinking, this has really been expired since, for 4 years.
That was my original
So
thought
they're
too,
not
and it
being
scared me.
tested. Right, so.
Scared me.
Okay, so that's what worried me. But as far as the defibrillator, we are looking at
Absolutely. Do you need more information on that, or what can I get you to help you with
Unless
that?
the council does, but I understand that we need a modern defibrillator that can,
And my-
that's part of ACLS protocol, and we need to know what the CO2 level is.
My plan for that, when I looked at, I should have brought it with me, when I looked at the hours on the monitors we have, I would rotate, I would take the oldest, most used unit that we currently have, put that on engine 3, and put the newer one on whichever apparatus is getting the most use right now of the monitor defibrillators.
So where is the defibrillator now?
It's not
at
on the
Zoll?
truck.
It's not on the truck.
In public session, it is not on the truck.
Okay, thank you.
Question. The 04 bottles that you purchased, they're good till 19?
To whatever the...
15 years?
15 years. At
So
15 years, they have to...
December of 19, so we could...
No.
No.
That's
Whatever the date, if it says
Okay,
May,
whatever-
it's
okay.
got to go out
Yeah.
in May of 19.
Okay.
So within the next fiscal year,
So
they
we're
have to
doing
go.
all right if we receive
Yeah.
it. that's
Absolutely,
fine. We're
absolutely,
fine.
yes.
All right, and as far as the defibrillator, I'm gonna put it on the next budget, because Nancy was still looking at what accounts we could, and that defibrillator is 7,000?
No,
30,000, I'm
36,000.
I
Between
was thinking-
35 and
I'm
36,
thinking
I
of
can get
bottles again.
I can get a current quote for you on that if you wish.
And there's no grants out there that would cover some of that? Okay. All right.
And again, if you have any other questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them at
All right.
any time.
Any questions from anyone? But I think I feel much better safety-wise. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Drink some water.
Solicitor, discussion of possible vote. Tony, I'm going to read the letter before we get there, or do you want to?
Please do, and then I'll just make some comments.
Discussion and possible vote on renewal of building officials' employment contract. I'd just like to make this letter publicly that was received a few hours ago from our building inspector, President of the Town Council, Dee Maderis, and Interim Town Administrator Mello. I am grateful to the people of Tiverton for the privilege of serving them for the past 3 years. I feel I have done my best with the resources provided to be fair and equitable in the enforcement of the building code. My skills and experience are in demand, and I have opportunities in both the private and public sector for professional growth. I therefore do not seek renewal of my contract with the town of Tiverton. My last day will be March 30th, 2018. Now, what I understand is we still should vote not to renew the contract.
Correct. What you need to do is accept the letter of resignation and also vote not to renew the contract.
Okay. And Nancy and I have talked about this. She's going to look to see if we can get some state help to come in and cover Neil's position until we hire someone. That's what we did last time. We got a retired building inspector that was able to perform all the duties and did well. We may have a problem with the casino work, but Four-Leaf, I know that the casino said anything we couldn't handle, they would just give over to Four-Leaf. So it won't stop the casino. And I haven't talked to, I was going to have Tony talk to Mark tomorrow, because I had just received this letter a couple of hours ago. So I need to...
Make a motion, we accept his letter of
Second.
resignation.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Not me.
Opposed?
I'm just going to abstain.
Okay.
Madam President, motion to not renew the building official's contract.
That's what I
Second.
just did.
No, we just accepted his resignation.
We
Oh.
accept this.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Anything else, Tony, you want to add?
No. Madam President, may I have 1 second? I just, sitting back there.
Are you
thinking-
back again?
I am back again.
Hopefully you're ahead, chief.
All right, never mind. I'm ahead of
No,
myself.
it's
I was
okay.
thinking of something that, it's another item you got coming up.
Yes.
My apologies.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. DPW Director Anderson requests approval to transfer for $3,000 from account 5530-6442 landfill equipment rentals to account 5540-7423 to cover expenses for supply and licenses. Hi, Bill.
Hello. Thank you. Let's see, this account, the 7423 was shorted $5,000 when the budget was approved last year. This account, I've actually come to find out from doing the budget this year that it covers a lot more things than office supplies, let's put it that way, which I've tried to break out in the new budget. So as a result of, I had 50% of my staff needing to get their license renewals. I had 3 new hires who I had to outfit them with all the requirements of rain gear, everything else like that. I need money to put back into the account, because I'm already pretty much at, I think there was $2 or $3 left in the account, to try and cover me through the end of the year. Right now, I'm looking to take it from my landfill cover account, only because we received alternate cover from 2 projects in Cranston, which we're able to use that as cover material.
I make a motion, we transfer the money.
Second.
Thank you.
This is going to be
Oh,
the
yeah.
easiest thing. Yeah, don't think us, yeah. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Bill, you got it.
Thank you.
We're on the budget now?
Now we're on the budget.
There is a God.
We're still going. Senior Center Director, thank you for waiting so long. We apologize.
I gotta recuse out of this thing. For the senior center. As the bus driver.
I've been up since 4 this morning, so be nice to me, all right?
I can't believe.
Britt's on, bus driver.
You know, Nancy, I'm almost thinking of,
Thank you.
we'll do the senior center, we'll move everything else to next Saturday. We're gonna be here till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I hope this isn't gonna go that long.
Well, no, but. Yes, you're staying till 1 o'clock in the morning.
I might as well
We're
just
talking about the bus thing, I'm just gonna get out of this whole thing altogether. We'll let Kathy do his
Wow.
thing.
Well, you go to one of our bulletins, though.
Would you fill them out for last meeting?
All right, so, Jan, we actually went through your budget.
Oh, good.
Without you the other day. Oh, no, it wasn't your fault, we
Several
knew.
questions.
Do you have some
There was
questions
only
on
one
it?
or two that we had
Nancy,
question on.
is
That
this
was
the
it.
new one?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so what we were looking at, we were, if anybody
It's
can.
restricted
It's the
account.
new,
It's
it's the new one that was.
Oh, yeah, that's just a discussion.
That you had with Paul.
Right, well, the issue is, as you know, that we collect money from each of the classes. So the classes, you know, they pay their money for the classes, and that money ends up getting turned back to the town. But we're still paying for those instructors through another fund. To me, it makes more sense if we hold on to, I mean, it ends up almost being a wash, because I did the calculation as to what the class money has been, and it's been an average of $9,754 per year over the last 3 years or so. I went back and looked them up. So it's about $4,000 to $5,000 every 6 months. And so when you look at that account,
I'm
originally.
gonna stop you right here for a
Sure.
moment, because we can't have restricted accounts like that.
Oh, you can't, oh, all right.
No. All your, everyone's revenue goes into the pot.
Right.
And, because of that, you cannot take aside some of your revenue to make a piggy bank for.
Well, it would
other
only
things.
be for the instructors, it would be like just a wash, basically. I mean, it,
We can't have restricted accounts like that. Am I right, everybody over there?
Oh,
Yeah. Okay.
okay, well, I don't know.
Yeah,
Paul-
so
Paul
that's
was-
why, that's what the question was. And I know what, Paul discussed this with me, and at the time I told him, I don't think you can do that.
Okay.
Because then you'd have the fire department doing that, yeah, doing that with their revenue, and the DPW doing that with their revenue. And that's not what our charter says.
Well,
You-
that's fine, then
that
we'll
all
just stick
revenue-
it to the original way then, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, that.
Yeah,
that-
and I apologize, it was a creative idea, but everyone would do it, and nothing would go into the general fund if that happened, so.
All right. Well, you're paying for it already.
We are, it's kind of,
Yeah,
but it's because of the charter where all revenue has to go into, unless they can be restricted for certain things, but not for this.
Can't do it.
Okay, oh, that's,
But that means those numbers are off.
So those numbers are off.
oh, they're off then big
yes.
time then, yeah, so you can get rid of the zero.
Yeah, so, I've totally lost you on here.
All right, so.
Okay.
I think it's
Page
the hour.
12.
Okay. All right, so the restricted account we cannot do.
All right.
So that would take 1,000 right off the bat.
So then could we go back to the original amount and just level fund up to the 11,300, which is what we received
In your supply.
approved or whatever. Yeah, because it's all grouped together, basically. The supplies, the.
Okay.
It's all put in one big chunk, and so I was separating it. So if we can't separate it, then
So we would make that 11, so we would increase that by $6,300? Am I right, everyone? Yes.
Looks like,
Okay.
It increased to 11,000.
Where is-
Oh, yeah, 63.
where does
That would be
that
supply
come from?
7470. You see what I'm looking at?
How did it go from 11,300 to 5,000 this year?
Well, that was my
Because that's what she was
proposal.
trying to.
If we were to keep the class donations, but they said that we can't do it that way, so now we're going back to the original,
The original one.
which was what it was before, so.
So that goes up by 6,300, which of course the bottom line goes up.
Is that supplies, you mean supplies for the senior center? And the activities? or is that
And it's
supplies for
also
the
our
activities?
printing as well. It's a combination. All our printing costs are in that. Well, that's kind of what I was trying to do, is separate it, but,
Well, the bottom line, we only got 5,300, because you got 1,000 in there.
well, the 1,000 you can get rid of,
Well, yeah.
because that was just a,
Right, but I'm saying if you're gonna go up 6,300, you already got that 1,000 in the bottom line of 117, so you'd only be going up 53 instead of 63. Because you already got the 1,000
Oh, yeah.
included in the 117.
Right, but it brings that
Right.
number to 6,300, so.
Right.
So, yeah, Joe, you're right.
Gee, can I get that right? So I can show my wife
Well,
I've
it's
been
on
right once?
TV right
got it
now, I
right.
just announced it.
So-
Okay, and then, anything else we had questions on, guys? I think,
There was something else, but I can't
yeah, there
remember
was,
what
it
The
was
electric bill is
expenses.
something-
It was travel expenses.
oh, that's still, it would be nice, but it's not necessary. I could live without it, so. I saw the conference, I thought, oh, that would be nice, because I didn't know how you would do it, because it doesn't stay each year to
Yep.
develop into enough to go to a conference. So then I thought, well, if you ask for the amount, but it's just kind of a pipe dream, really. So, I might stick around a little longer before I ask for that again. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I can live without it.
So,
Where does the money come from for the fuel for the bus? Where does that come from? Is that does that, like, go to DPW to get fuel?
Yes,
Does that come out
that's
of that
correct.
account?
Yeah. Well, no.
Because I
We
don't
have
see
our
it
own.
I don't see it in your
Oh,
account.
our bus account? Well,
I
it's.
see bus service,
Yeah,
but I don't
but-
see any,
That includes, that bus
That includes
service
the gas.
includes the diesel,
okay,
the repairs,
okay.
the bus driver's salary. It's all included
All
in
right.
that amount.
So, I thought when it said bus service, I thought that's what
No,
the
these are
driver got
misleading because
paid.
all of these accounts are like,
Okay,
most of them, they add a lot of stuff,
They intertwine.
Yeah, like the one thing for the maintenance for the building, it includes all my exterminator, all your inspectors, things, the fire inspector, my septic, when I have to get the septic, which I have to do at least 3 times a year, and that's 600 and plus a pop.
3 times a year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people using those bathrooms, and.
well, it's a bad septic, too. I
Yeah.
mean, well, it's,
we don't have storage there yet, huh?
No,
So,
I would love that. I
Okay.
would love sewer there.
May I just ask 2 questions, if that's okay?
Oh, sure.
So one, because I know we've put some money into the senior center recently in terms of trying to improve the energy efficiency of the building and all that.
However,
but,
it ended up increasing my bill.
yeah, so the electric bill's gone up. We know, the electric bill is up substantially.
Well, I called them in and found out why.
Okay,
Because we have to pay back $8,006.33
on the light conversion.
over a 48-month period. So
Yeah.
that increased our payment by $179.85 per month. So it practically doubled our electric bill. So that's why I was putting in a request for more money in the electric account.
which is smart, because we
Because you'll be in
noticed
the hole
that,
otherwise.
that with all those
And
payments.
then the second question on the maintenance, which is up a little bit, and as I said, I know we redid the floors last year and things, is
Yeah,
there
that I used on a separate account, though. I did not use money from the town. That was money that was in the senior center has an account that was from donations so I didn't use this money, but I do want to maintain it, which they told us for $300 a year, they will be able to come in and do one whole coat for the entire seniors, which I thought was a bargain after having it done, because it came out nice.
Yep.
Hopefully you saw it. But,
Yeah, we've been there.